Not many people here tonight.
It's a big crowd tonight.
Good
Good evening. This is May 15th at 7:30. Calling to order ANC 3F's meeting for May. I am Vice Chair David Dickinson, representing ANC 3F01. We are called to order, and we're going to do a roll call starting on my left, please.
Andrea Molad, 3F05, Commission Secretary.
Shirley Edelstein, 3F2, Commission Treasurer.
Naomi Rettenberg, 3F03.
Bill Siddick, 3F06.
And we were just having a brief discussion. We don't have with us tonight our chair, Pat Kopchak, who I believe is on travel with an excused absence. And we also wanted to note publicly that the commissioner for ANC 3F04, Deirdre Brown, has formally resigned from the commission. And we are still in discussions with how to backfill that position, whether that can happen before the November general election. But in the meantime, please contact, for those constituents of 04, feel free to contact both Pat Kopchak, our chair, or myself as well. Any questions about that? We have 5 of the 7 commissioners, including 3 of the officers, so I believe we have a quorum. Is there any question about that? So I will quickly run through the agenda. Anything we can help you with? Okay, that's okay. We have a call to order, etc. Then item 2 is the commissioner updates, committee reports, community open forum. I'm going to make a motion at the end of this to have the Forest Hill Playground letter of support for an upcoming event. That discussion immediately followed the community open forum, since we have somebody from Forest Hills that could just quickly introduce it, and we should be able to act on it within 2 minutes. So that would be my suggestion between items 4 and 5. Then we'll have a presentation from the Alcohol Beverage Regulation Administration. We have 5 settlement agreements pertaining to some wine-type delivery services that we can get into later. Van Ness Main Street Public Art proposals here tonight. Welcome, Teresa. We have the Citizens Climate Lobby presentation. We have a ballot initiative discussion, ballot initiative 77, and then we have various administrative matters. Does anybody have any amendments other than the Forest Hill Playground?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'd like to move that we consider a resolution on the proposed changes to the L1 and L2 bus lines.
Okay. And where would you like that?
We can just put it at the end of the agenda.
Yeah, let's put it before the April.
After 9.
Sorry? After 9, between 9 and 10.
Okay.
That's okay. Sorry. You can share.
Get mine out.
Pat and I were talking about that, but is there anyone from the Citizens Climate Lobby here this evening? I saw an email, so I'm sorry, late, that we have them just introduce it, but have we heard from them at all before? Well, let's keep it on the agenda for now. So we have 2 friendly amendments. One after the community open forum, to have somebody from Tracy from Forest Hills Playground. Is that correct? I think that's close enough. Or Friends of Forest Hill Playground. And then between items 9 and 10, the L1, L2 bus concern. So let's start with Andrea on my left. Any moving items?
You want to move to approve the modified agenda?
No, I don't want to do that. I move to modify the agenda.
Seconded.
Those in favor? The vote is, how many do we have tonight? 5-0. Here we go. Let's start with Bill with commissioner updates and announcements.
Yeah, I have a few. On April 19th, I took a tour of the merch building that's being renovated, and with our hard hats and all, parents and administrators and teachers, we went through, and it's really very impressive. The school, I don't know if it's doubling in size, but even the older part is being renovated to be very modern and up to date, and the classrooms are quite spacious, and then we saw where some of the artwork was going to be. Anyway, it was very impressive, and they're very much on schedule, and expect to open for this fall semester with renovation completed in July or early August. I attended the Phil Mendelssohn's quarterly ANC meeting, and I won't go over everything. One of the highlights was the alcohol beverage committee talk, and the representative from the police department was there who reported that crime, especially serious crime, has gone down in all of the wards of the city in the last 6 months, including our ward. The other thing which is of interest to the ANC, I guess, is that petitions will be available on July 9th for the ballot in November for ANC commissioners, and have to be returned by August the 8th. So don't go on vacation for July. Or do go on vacation, depending on how you feel. And Gottlieb reported that there's legislation that I think his office is putting forward for ANCs to get credit cards. So, be more on that. At my behest and the constituents' request, the ANC in February did a resolution to change some signs on Ellicott Street to allow parents to park outside a nursery school. 2 weeks ago, the signs were finally changed. This is the end of April, beginning of May. However, one of the signs is still in contention, and the people who are enforcing it, maybe Ian hasn't up some more recent news, but this still creating confusion to the parking people, and some of the parents are still getting tickets, even though the signs, if you read them carefully, they should not be getting tickets. So we'll be following through on that. And the last thing is there have been a couple of issues in my area to do with trees. One resident was very unhappy that the city planted trees in front of his house. Another resident thought that a tree needed to be taken down because it was rotting and branches were falling. Anyway, I put them in touch with the Urban Forestry Department of DDOT, who were extremely competent people, and helped to resolve the issues, not totally to the satisfaction of the residents, but in a very professional way, dealt with the issues. That's all I have.
Commissioner Siddick,
Yes.
with regard to merch, and maybe we'll hear from Ms. Gray from EDC as well, but it sounds like they're planning to move in first day of school in August. Are they on schedule? And then what I really wanted to ask about is the exodus from UDC and what the plans are for that.
Well, the construction is to be completed in mid-July. I think the administrative staff is going to start occupying it in August, and with the students coming in September. Exactly what the schedule is of the move, I don't know, but I can find out. But I imagine it will be most of it during August.
Yeah. Well, we can talk a little bit during your time as well in terms of the Van Ness Street traffic issues during the deconstruction. Sorry, Commissioner Rupert.
Thank you. I just want to mention that a number of neighbors who live on Brandywine Street between Broad Branch Road and Linian and a little bit further west are concerned about the speeding and running through the stop signs that are going on in that area. They and I have been in touch with Mary Chay's office, with DDOT and the Metropolitan Police Department. There have been a couple of visits out there. There have been a couple different proposals that have been mooted that people are considering. There are pros and cons depending where you live on the street to some of those proposals. But there clearly is an issue of both speeding and people running through stop signs. We had a report from the MPD here a couple months ago. It hasn't all abated. And the other issue I think that's rising up more and more is Broad Branch Road, a long Broad Branch stream, has been crumbling and is not getting any better, which is also quite a safety issue as the roadway is starting to disappear into the stream. So again, we're trying to elevate this with DDOT and NPS. I know there people are interested, and there are plans for Broad Branch Road rehabilitation, but it's on a very, very slow fuse. And so I think it's something we will try to elevate a little bit to the best that we can going forward.
Okay, I just want to remind folks, in case you didn't notice last weekend, that for, I think, the next 2 weekends, the Van Ness Metro Station will be closed from, I think, Van Ness to DuPont. I don't have my notes in front of me. And shuttles will be operating all weekend, so just expect that and be aware for the next 2 weekends.
Andrew, would you like to go? I have two quick things. Holland and Knight, the law firm representing Bernstein Development, filed a request for modification on an existing PUD for the 4250 Connecticut Avenue property, sometimes known as the Fannie Mae, or at least the Fannie Mae on Connecticut. They filed that on May 4th. The Zoning Commission, I believe, is going to have an initial hearing on June 11th, which will be for the sole purpose of deciding whether the characterization from the law firm is a proper characterization, whether it's truly a modification of significance. There will be an opportunity at a later Zoning Commission hearing, more likely in July or August, at least not in June, for the matter to be formally considered by the Zoning Commission. I had written a letter in my individual capacity as a single member supporting this in general and the concepts that they've so far engaged in a lot of meetings with the ANC and had a separate community meeting. My letter of support noted that we will have a community meeting, and then we will subsequently at an ANC vote on whether we support the request for the modifications. So stay tuned for that. I'm hoping potentially to have that type of community meeting in early June. I want to also note that Fred Underwood, who had been a terrific resource for Bernstein and was really terrific with the ANC, has resigned from Bernstein. He's still working in a different capacity, but I'm in the initial stages of both working with the law firm and with others at Bernstein to move forward with that project and the ANC's review. Switching topics, many of you know that I have Hearst Park in my district. They had a meeting back in April 5th or so, early April, DPR and DGS. The DGS website continues to have copies of all of their presentations. We as an ANC passed a resolution in January primarily on environmental issues such as stormwater, heritage trees, erosion, and different hydrology issues. I received a letter that was actually addressed to former Commissioner Chairman Nugent from the Director of DPR, Keith Anderson, expressing a appreciation for our resolution, a sensitivity to the environmental issues that we've raised, and continuing to work with us and have community meetings, and also that they would be consulting with the ANC and the community about programming at the park, including various aquatic activities with the pool and other activities on the new field. So I took that as a great sign of encouragement. There are lots of people still in the community concerned about various environmental issues, and in that respect, I think we're hoping to have DGS and DPR at our June or possibly whenever our next Parks and Trails Committee meeting happens, so perhaps we could pull them forward and either address those issues there or at the June ANC meeting, have them come back. It's been a while since they've been here. Thank you. Commissioner Malone?
I've no.
So moving on to our committee reports, let's go ahead and start with the Parks and Trails Committee. If you
Sure.
like.
So the Parks and Trails Committee met last night. We meet the second Monday of the month, which second Monday and the third Tuesday came back to back this month. And so just a few highlights from that is Alex Sanders, who's the vice chair and also director at the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, told us they did a big trail maintenance work on Melvin Hazen last week, work on the trail and also clearing out a lot of honeysuckle brush and bushes, which they then use to block the social trails, the trails which are not meant to be regularly walked on and used because they lead to erosion. So just to encourage everyone to go take a walk on the main and marked trails there and to stay off the trails that have big bushy things in front of them. That means do not go. They're going to do something similar in Soapstone Valley in the next couple of weeks. That one is actually not in as good shape as Melvin Hazen and will be a bigger piece of work for them. The main topic at our meeting was a presentation by Mary Beth Ray about the Van Ness Main Streetscape project. So there have been 3 studies done on the Van Ness streetscape that point to the biggest changes would be the tree boxes, enlarging them and having them better able to manage stormwater, as well as a move to pervious instead of the impervious pavement that lines the 4 blocks of Van Ness right now. There are 4 blocks. There are 2 sides to the street on each block, so a total of 8, and the estimate is about $1 million a block, or about $8 million plus design and planning fees. So Van Ness Main Street is looking for $10 million for this project. There's $1.5 million is in the budget now, thanks to Mary Che. That would be used for, this would go to DDOT to be used for the initial design, plans, and permit. I think it's another couple weeks. There's a vote on the budget today, but I think there's one more vote on the final budget in a couple weeks to know if that's going to be there for sure. And then Van Ness Main Street, led by Mary Beth and Marlene Berlin, are doing a lot of fundraising at different agencies and offices. The ask to the ANC committee, the Parks and Trails Committee, is to help craft and testimony and testify in the 2020 budget to make sure that the additional funding comes from DDOT after this initial $1.5 million investment. So that's something that got a warm reception at the committee. We'll be working on and bring to the ANC in the form of a resolution at the appropriate time. Another area to be worked on is the old Kiss and Ride behind the Bernstein building. It's something we're going to see is why we're looking at, or David is looking at, or helping us look at this plan unit development. Is a modification. What was originally committed to, are they following through with the original commitments? And if so, can that help make that Kiss and Ride area better marked and used for safety purposes? And then David also did an update on the Hearst Stormwater project, what he just shared with you now.
And just real quickly on that stormwater project at Hearst, there's an Idaho Avenue right-of-way, which is on the east side of the park, and DDOT, in conjunction with DPR, are sort of turning that into a project to meet the stormwater retention requirements, the 1.2-inch storm, if you will. So in addition to doing that at the park itself, they're also taking on the right-of-way, which was in our resolution. And it's good news they're doing that. They are responding to the ANC, so we're doing a good job.
We agree. We'd like to write, recommend that the ANC send a letter sort of thanking them and acknowledging and giving some positive feedback that they have come through with that. And as far as Teresa, is there anything else you wanted to add about the streetscape? That was great.
And I think there was a streets and sidewalks committee meeting. Sorry, Bill. Go ahead, please.
Yes, there was a very short meeting last Wednesday. There were only 4 of us, but there were a couple of things we discussed. Mainly, the main issue was, the ANC had passed a resolution for a survey of Connecticut Avenue traffic and safety study, and the committee, first of all, wants to follow up on, with the city of what's going on about that. We hadn't heard anything. That's something we can discuss in the committee, and the committee felt, the people who were there felt fairly strongly that we should probably meet with the people before they do the study to ensure that they follow the priorities that the ANC and the committee are interested in.
Has anybody heard from DDOT since?
No, nobody has heard anything.
Okay.
Maybe the chair of the committee wasn't there, but as far as we know, he hasn't heard anything yet either.
Was there any discussion? There's a Ward 3 bicycling group, and I know Councilmember Che is looking a lot at bike lanes on Connecticut Avenue, and there's been a lot of discussion around that and maybe mixed messaging as to what's going on. Did you guys discuss that? Or?
No, we didn't discuss that specifically, except I believe that was mentioned in the resolution,
right,
to look at the bike lane situation, and that would be one of the things that we would want to talk to them about before they actually did a study. The other thing that came up, a few members of the committee were concerned with the Van Ness Main Street Committee was planning all sorts of things with the sidewalks, and this committee had not been consulted. And maybe that's something we need to talk about.
When I talked about the streetscape, and you went to the streets and
the committee is because one of the committees in the purview of the committee is safety and condition of sidewalks, and if there's going to be some major work or changes done in the sidewalk area, the committee felt at least should get involved and could help. So that's something we can discuss further.
I have one more thing. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned this. When we were talking about the Van Ness Main Street streetscape project, one of the things that Mary Beth showed us was a picture of Connecticut Avenue completely flooded after an August storm. And one of the things we talked about is that what's being proposed for these 4 blocks of Connecticut Avenue are not going to resolve that. It's going to help take some of that water off and help some of that runoff into Soapstone, which is one of the reasons that it's our committee. There's been flooding in the businesses along Connecticut. But really but some of that, or a significant amount of that water, is coming from further west, basically further uphill from Connecticut Avenue. And there would need to be mitigation and amelioration up there, up in the Wakefield neighborhood and things. Nothing specific that I know about it at all has been discussed among DDOT, but if there's really concern about tackling this problem, that is going to have to be, something that is going to have to be looked at and see what the options are and what would be acceptable and effective.
Maybe we don't need a Hearst pool. Maybe we can have a Connecticut Avenue pool.
We have a director that would be happy to talk about programming.
How would you begin to address what happens with the stormwater in the Wakefield area? Because what I do is affected by that as well. So what would be a way for you to approach that?
Looking at David, he's got more experience at this. Start with a meeting with DDOT, I think, and talk about what the problems are and what their plans, if any, are, and try to get it on their attention.
Well, we'd have to first have to identify sort of the geographic scope of what we're talking about and what ANCs and districts are involved, and then it may be primarily 3F, I'm not sure, but whether it's DDOT or DOEE, both would probably have an interest in terms of different mitigation or retention measures, and the mayor's office, I'm sure, has ideas.
Chat after this a little bit because I've gotten some information
we may even want to have DOE come in at some point and give an update on the River Smart program and other stormwater mitigation measures in conjunction with DOE. And that'd be great if we could set something
And Ian,
up.
what's this? You mentioned the stormwater team. Is that a cross-department team?
I know, that's all right.
Oh, within DDOT. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Well, let's
Yeah.
go ahead and take this up separately. We just want to get through the announcements, but it's good to have a dialogue for sure. Thank you. So I don't think we have any other committee reports. Is that correct? Do we have something from the Grounds Committee?
Nothing.
Okay.
Or, actually, we got a thank you letter from Rock Creek Conservancy
We did.
for our
We
grant.
did, which is
We're
always
discussing. Come on.
always a nice touch. So I'll just say that we got a very lovely letter from the Rock Creek Conservancy thanking us for our recent grant. We do appreciate the acknowledgement and are delighted to be able to support projects like this in our area. That's it.
Great. Great. We will turn to our community open forum. Can I get a show of hands on how many folks would like to? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Mr. Magger, would you like to go first?
Hey, I'm Ian Maggard, the Ward 3 liaison for Van Bowser's office. I have two quick announcements to make. Today, actually right here in Ward 3, over off of Wisconsin Avenue, the mayor was at Communikids announcing 2 new child care spaces, one right here at UDC and the second at Deanwood Recreation Center. Communikids won a grant to open up here on the UDC campus, which will provide space for 54 new students, and in conjunction with that, it also UDC applicants had to agree to partner with UDC's Early Childhood Education Certification Program to provide students with hands-on training.
What age group is that?
That is pre-K3, pre-K4, and as part of the mayor's big push to create 1,000 new child care slots within the next 3 years.
But this wouldn't be just pre-K 3-4. This would be birth to 4, right? These are supposed to be child development centers that are not just pre-K programs.
This would be pre-K3, pre-K4.
The district already has a universal pre-K program, and I thought this was part of the mayor's initiative to expand child care more broadly and lower the cost of child care in the district.
Yeah, and so it would be free at UDC.
I think, it would be actually, we've had people raise the issue of child care costs before, and this is an important issue. I wonder if maybe you could help connect us with someone who can come talk a little more about that, especially since one of these really important pilot initiatives is taking place here.
Yeah, of course.
And also because of Imagine Broadcaster's Child Development Center, which is not subsidized, but is closing, and that means that the area is losing a lot of spots. It's in Gendelsville, so it's closing, I imagine. Do you know when? That's a lot of spots in child
Ms.
care.
Gray, would you like to come up, because I think we're going to follow Mr. Maggard.
Juanita Gray, University of the District of Columbia. If you'd like, I can have a schedule for Dean Massey to come to the next meeting to talk specifically about the program that will be here at the university. She'll be spearheading it on behalf of the university, so you can have more details specifically about our campus Child Development Center.
I think that would be great, and it would also be nice to have someone from the mayor's office talk more generally about the broader efforts the mayor has undertaken to help address the high cost of childcare in D.C. I know it's an issue that's been raised in this venue before. So thank you, Juanita. I'll follow up with you about that.
Okay.
And yeah, I can follow up with DME or OSI to bring somebody to the meeting and
Great,
talk
thank
more
you.
in depth about it. And then, secondly, the annual point in time count was released last week. It is the annual count of individuals who are experiencing homelessness in the District of Columbia. It's done every January, and it kind of gives the roadmap and kind of shows what direction we're going. The point in time count over the last year showed family homelessness decreased by 20.8%, and since 2016, family homelessness is down nearly 40%. This is after the Homeward DC plan was initiated, which is a full reform of our homelessness programs, focused on homelessness prevention, and then a focus on family homelessness, veteran homelessness, and also individual homelessness. So it's a 5-year plan. And then also later this year, we have 3 of the short-term family housing sites opening in 4, 7, and 8 to continue on those programs.
When is the Ward 3 one opening?
Next summer is scheduled to open.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks for your time tonight.
Yeah.
Ms. Gray.
Again, Juanita Gray, University of the District of Columbia. A few updates. This past weekend, we had our commencement ceremony at the Convention Center. Over 600 associate, baccalaureate, and master's degrees were conferred on our students, including 2 honorary degrees. So that was a pretty exciting event. Happy to see them go and the next group come back in. On Saturday, May 5th, the university, in partnership with Cultural Tourism DC, hosted the Passport DC Around the World Embassy Tours. We had 6 embassies here at the university and the Student Center. That event saw over 4,700 people come through the Student Center. They were going to the farmers market, which I'm sure Teresa will talk about. The neighborhood was just pretty alive and kicking last Saturday, or 2 Saturdays ago, I should say. So the university looks forward to continuing our partnership with Cultural Tourism DC. Ian already spoke about the Child Development Center. The university has been working with PEPCO. Commissioner Siddick brought it to our attention that the street lights on Yuma and Connecticut, some of them weren't working. It was a question of were they the university's lights or the city's lights. They're the city's lights, so I know one of them was repaired. Commissioner Siddick is still in communication with Darren McCain at the university, so we'll continue to update on when those lights are fixed.
We really appreciate their help. They've been very, very
Connecticut
on
and
top
Yuma.
of this.
Near the tennis courts.
Yeah, by the tennis courts.
So the university is currently working with WMATA. I don't know if you've noticed at the Van Ness UDC metro station, the university is highlighted, but there are some of our buildings specifically that people are looking for that they don't see. So we're working to have specific university buildings put on that map. WMATA is redoing all of the maps at the metro station, so what they're going to do is essentially put something over the existing one, and then for the maps that they're working on in the future, they'll be embedded into those future maps. Additionally, the university is also working with WMATA on, when you're on the metro or when you're on the red line, it says Van Ness UDC. We're wanting them to say Van Ness University of the District of Columbia so that people who are on the metro know that this is actually a university. When you say UDC, unless you're familiar with the university, you don't know that there's a university at this stop. And it is parallel with other universities who are on metro stops. Howard University, it says Howard University, Tinleytown American University. So they're going to, we're working with them on that project, and it seems like it's a go. Let's see, a few other things, and I'll wrap this up. We're still in negotiation with 4225, the Walgreens building. No major updates on that right now. As for the location where Merch is currently housed, the university has been approached by Eaton Elementary School about housing their school in that space while they renovate. We're still in negotiations. Nothing has been set in stone, but it is a very high likelihood that we will have another school in that space in the upcoming year. So once I have more details on that, which I know the community will want, I will definitely update. That's all we have right now for that space.
Who else couldn't I talk to at the university about that?
Troy.
Troy. Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. And then just lastly, I left some flyers out on the counter, but our School of Engineering has 2 exciting programs going on this summer. The first one is for young girls in the DMV, age grades 9 through 12. It's called WEAVE, Women Exposed Actively to Value of Engineering. It's June 18th through the 22nd. It's a free program. Applications are online. Again, you can get these notices out there. And then there's another one, Summer Biomedical Engineering Workshop. It's open to all students, June 25th through the 29th. And all you have to do is sign up for those. So, any questions?
Thank you for your hospitality once again.
Of course.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the update.
Okay.
That is my question.
Yes.
Do you have community members
I'm
raised
sorry?
concern about the school being
there aren't any, well,
I can't hear
Ms.
you.
Gray?
Sorry. Yes.
Just real quick, just to highlight for you, and I'll bring it forward to Troy and others at UDC. So some of the concerns among several regarding an elementary school being housed on the campus. One, I think the community appreciates it, and I know it's a big sacrifice for the university as it moves forward with its own planning and strategic thinking. So let me just personally express appreciation for that as a parent of elementary kids. However, I think some of the concerns raised have been parking on the nearby neighborhood streets, and parents and staff may or may not have access to the underground parking here and are parking in limited areas on residential streets, but that's just to bring that out. And frankly, one of the larger concerns was I'm just going to make up a number, 75 to 100 heavy-duty trucks, 18-wheeler trucks that had delivered the trailers onto the campus, and many of those may or may not have been potentially exiting west on Van Ness Street over to Wisconsin or whatever. I think there was primarily an effort to come in on Connecticut Avenue and go back out, but it chews up the sidewalk, it chews up the medians on Van Ness Street, and there's at least some question as to whether the trucks are traveling in the right direction, but it sounds like that might be an issue kick down the road for a year or two.
I mean, they're valid fact or points, and we take them into consideration. And we'll definitely, if you'd like for Troy to come to the next meeting to discuss it further, I can definitely ask him to come,
That'd be terrific.
or someone from our real estate and facilities. If they, we don't move forward, then they can talk about the exit strategies. Should have happened.
This would probably be a really good topic for our next community campus task force meeting. If it's
Yes,
taking
we do
place
have one
before
coming
the
up.
exit, so let's keep that in mind. That might be a good forum for a longer discussion of this.
And when is that? Remind me.
I have to check. I
June,
apologize.
July?
I think
I'll
it's
email it out.
It's probably coming up this summer. So, I mean, let's be sure to talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. There was a question in the audience. Oh, yeah. if you'd
Ms.
like
Gray,
to-
can you repeat the question, please?
There was a question in the audience, but if you'd like to come up
for
and
the
introduce
microphone,
yourself.
just let it.
It's one of my colleagues from the university with our workforce development. Excuse me, she can introduce herself.
Hello, Commissioners. Good evening, everyone. My name is Beverly Lucas, and I'm the Director of Continuing Education at the University of the District of Columbia Community College. And we are in the midst of revitalizing our continuing education department and offering non-credit courses to working professionals. So one of the things that we have done is we have sent letters out to all the commissioners. I don't know if you received your letter. We're having a luncheon for commissioners on May 31st, Thursday, May 31st at 12 noon. And it's from 12 noon to 1:30, just to open up a conversation about what we can do and how we can serve your constituents.
And will that be on this campus? Or
No, it'll be on the community college campus.
Great.
It went out about 2 weeks ago, the notice.
I remember seeing that.
That's terrific.
Thanks for flagging it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Where is that?
Ms. Cameron?
Where?
Hi, everybody. Teresa Cameron, Van Ness Main Street. I wanted to, before I get into things we're working on, just mention for you and the Streets and Sidewalks Committee that sidewalks are really getting bad in front of the farmers market, and we've had to remove some bricks because people have actually almost injured themselves. And so if there's any way we can help put that on the higher end of DDOT coming out to fix that, it's really gotten bad, partly because there are trucks going through also from the construction on Building 52. But it's becoming a really big issue at the farmers market, especially with people who have little kids and strollers. So anything we can do to take pictures to highlight it, to bother them specifically about that would be great. Did you put it on the 311?
Yes,
thing?
it's on the 311 list, and the committee had put that on, but it's gotten so much worse. It's a
We
real
should
factor.
Put that as a priority.
Yeah, and so the farmers market, for everybody who wants to know, is on Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. and we collaborate with the University of the District of Columbia.
on this program. It's become really a great place to come and meet your family and friends, do some shopping. We have some new vendors this year. You can also bring your composting, so that's really great. It's a great service the district provides. We also have a new vendor that sells gluten-free bread, so people are very excited about that. Ivy City Fish is back, and then, of course, all of our farmers. So, again, 8 to 2, and this Saturday we'll have Jonathan Barstick, who comes and does cooking demonstrations for us, so he'll show you how to make really great things with all the different unique spring vegetables our farmers have. We also have jazz at VN this week coming up, actually next Thursday at Soapstone from 6:30 to 8, and they'll be offering several specials. We have great music, and we love our businesses hosting this. I wanted to put a plug in for Acacia Bistro because now they are offering their own jazz live on Saturday nights. So if you want something to do, stay in Van Ness and hear some great music. We're really trying to make this the jazz capital for DC. Another activity we have coming up is on June 23rd, which is a Saturday. We have Van Ness Main Street's fundraiser. We rely on donations from our community a lot, and so we would love to have you attend. Information's on our website. I also would encourage you to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram because we post business specials every day. One of the fun things that's coming up at Soapstone is doing a wedding Saturday morning breakfast. As you know, there's a big wedding happening across the pond, and so they're going to be projecting on their new wall television. They'll have specials. It should be a really, really fun thing. But we list a lot of opportunities like that, so please follow us, and it's just Van Ness Main ST. And in terms of design, we have been working with our businesses, and we have storefront improvement grants right now that are on the street. They're up to $5,000, so we're hoping many of our businesses apply. Those are due at the end of the month, so hopefully we'll be able to give some really nice grants out for our businesses to do some more significant work. We also are working with UDC and doing another pop-up in Building 52, and so more on that soon, but it will be a really nice new retailer coming into Van Ness on Fridays and Saturdays, so you can do some shopping other than just groceries. So those are kind of the things that we're working on now. I will say that we're really excited that Mary Che put money in the budget for our Streetscapes project. We have a mini streetscape project going on right now where we are actually landscaping some of our tree boxes purely out of the goodness of communities' hearts because we can't pay for any of that out of our funding that we get from the government. But we've ended up managing to work with the businesses and neighbors who stop by. And I want to thank Kathy Sykes, who really is on our design committee and has really spearheaded this. She deserves a lot of credit. And if you look in front of Building 52, which is the building where Acacia is, we've redone all of those tree boxes and we're starting to move up the street. So it's just little touches, but it makes the neighborhood very happy, and we thank all of our dog owners for not letting their dogs go in our tree boxes.
Jason, I have a couple of questions about the blue lights on the side of the
Yes,
Is
isn't that awesome?
Van Ness Main Street?
Yeah.
Is that something they did?
Actually, the managing director there, Jamie Hauser, is really an interesting guy and has been in this neighborhood a very long time. And our design committee actually had talked about, wouldn't it be nice to do something on the side of that building because it just needed something. And so I met with Jamie and just cajoled him and gave him the idea that it was his idea. And so so they're there. And he actually said we could also show movies on the side of that building. So that could be
really
fun.
striking. Yeah, great. Good to him.
It's the Days Inn. So they have that parking lot and a big space for projection. That's all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I think we have Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Johnke. I live at 4740 Connecticut, and I'm here on behalf of Friends of Forest Hills Playground tonight. I'm a member of the board. We had a big cleanup on April 21st. About 50 volunteers showed up, cleaned up all over the park. And collected about 80 bags of weeds and trash. It's the biggest cleanup in my memory at that park. I've lived here 22 years, and I don't remember anything like that. I don't remember everything, but I don't remember anything like that. On June 9th, Acacia Bistro is hosting a happy hour fundraiser for us and donating 20% of the proceeds. They're reserving the patio for us. So come, kids, no kids, don't bring the kids, honestly, if you don't want to. And we'll get a cut of that for playground improvements, pay performers at our concerts. We are planning to do the summer concert series again this year, and we're planning to do it Saturdays this year. June 23rd, July 28th, and August 25th are the tentative dates. Artists are not
Can I
yet...
ask you to repeat those? I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure. June 23rd, July 28th, August 25th. I think that's it. It's kind of off my memory. Our permits, we're applying for permits for 5 to 8 p.m., but the music will start by 6 and end at around 7. And the artists are not yet confirmed, but we're lining up acts, including Crush Funk, Marsha and the Positrons, basically bands that are all ages friendly. Big Hillbilly Bluegrass was another crowd favorite from the last couple of years. And the reason we're switching to Saturdays this year, we're trying it out. We've had trouble finding enough volunteers to help out Fridays because of people's work responsibilities. Even the board members have had trouble, including myself. I couldn't help out at all last summer. So hopefully Saturdays we'll get more volunteers, and that's really important. Unless we can get more people to volunteer at these events, it's likely we'll have to cancel at least one of them. And we will, and again, unless we get more volunteers, we probably won't even try next summer. We love the concerts. The community loves the concerts. We get great feedback, and we enjoy the community building, but we just need more community help to keep them going, because we have 7 board members on paper. Only 3 or 4 of us can be active at any time because of family and work commitments. All of us work. So we do need more community help, and it's really not a huge commitment. 30 minutes a year would be a huge help if more people pitched in. And to learn more, just email us at it's just forestdalesplayground@gmail.com. forestdalesplayground@gmail.com.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and just combine that in. Go ahead, Andrew.
Naomi.
Naomi,
Speaking
sorry.
of the concert series, so I'd like to submit a motion to the commissioners for a letter of support for the use of the amphitheater at Forest Hills Playground on the dates that Tracy's given us, from about 5 to 7:30 or 8, with a live band performing from 6 to 7:30. They have shared with us a health and safety plan for the event, and
This is for all the dates this summer?
all the
And how
dates.
many?
So this would be a letter of support for their permit with DPR.
Yeah.
Right, and repeat the dates again, please.
It's June 23rd,
Go ahead.
July 28th, and August 25th.
Okay, so this letter would cover
Yes.
sort of all those. And it includes the trash and safety and hours of the band. And
Yes.
Yeah, we've supported this every
Yeah,
year
yeah.
that they've done it.
Right.
So.
And we deliver letters to all of the neighbors, including the big buildings, the single-family homes about the park, and we also inform MPD 2D to let them know what's happening.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners? I'm going to ask any questions from the audience on these events at Forest Hills Playground and our letter of support. I don't know, is this a motion type of thing, or
Yes. Yeah, so I'm going to ask the ANC, the commission, to support this request their permit for DPR.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Tracy.
Thank
for all
you.
your-
And thank you
Tracy,
for all
I
your
noticed a
support.
typo or two in the letter, so I'll sort that out.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's my fault.
Oh.
No, I didn't. And then,
And so we are moving now, to Forest Hills, we're moving to new item 6, the presentation from the ABC, or the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration. Welcome.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Fashbaugh. I'm the Community Resource Officer with the Alcoholic Beverage Regulation Administration. How is everyone? Good.
Great.
Great. I came because I like to make it out to ANCs to remind the public that we do have a complaint hotline number, and we do rely heavily on community complaints so that we know that our licensees are in compliance with district laws and regulations. So things you may call our complaint hotline number over may include that the licensee is operating beyond hours they're approved to operate, maybe there's a lot of trash around the establishment, maybe you have other concerns, you can always call me to find out whether or not that's something that we enforce. But we also have this enforcement hotline number. We have 3 teams of investigators that are working 7 nights a week, 7 days a week as well. This number is manned from 7 p.m. till 3 a.m. 7 days a week. I have my business cards with the number tacked on the back, so if you would like one of my business cards, just make sure you, okay.
Can you call out the number so that I can
Yes.
put it in the record?
It's
Thank you.
202-329-6347. Again, that's 202-329-6347. And then again, you can reach out to me during the day and I can send out an investigator as well and we can discuss what we enforce.
Sorry, that number is your number or the hotline number?
That's the hotline
Great.
number.
I just want to make sure we
Yeah.
went. Okay.
So you will speak to a supervisory investigator if you call that number, and they'll be able to assist you. We take every complaint seriously. Just because you file a complaint today doesn't mean you can't call us tomorrow to file the same complaint. So we are interested in community feedback. Something worth noting is that we have a huge renewal season coming up. We just had the liquor stores, and I know that you worked so hard. You guys said that you have 5 settlement agreements.
We do.
A lot. It's a lot of work. I mean, your commissioners are working very hard, so definitely. It's a lot of work during renewal season, but next year is going to be worse because
You're all up next.
in 2019,
No, I only have
all
playgrounds.
on-premises establishments are up for renewal. So those are establishments like restaurants, taverns, nightclubs, just general bars, hotels, multi-purpose facilities, you name it. Those are all up for renewal. So your commissioners will be very, very busy. If you're interested in getting involved, there's 2 ways to do that. What will happen is when a licensee renews their license, they'll contact us and we'll give them placards and the community can file a protest letter. So I recommend considering 2 options. One, if you have an issue with a particular establishment in your neighborhood, please talk to your ANC commissioner about it. Sometimes they don't always know. There's not always good communication going on, and they're a great person to help you, and they can at least put you in contact with me because I know how business cards are. We don't always keep them. The other option is that you can also file a protest. So if there's an establishment that's a problem establishment that's no longer appropriate for your neighborhood, you can start taking notes now for why they aren't appropriate, and that way, you know, when it's protest time, you can come and show the board why you're having issues with this establishment. So again, all on-premises establishments are up for renewal next year.
And when will we receive formal notice? When will the notice period begin?
Sure. So in March, the deadline for renewal for restaurants, hotels, multi-purpose facilities, including boats, trains, and what have you, those are up for renewal by March 30th. You will start receiving notice probably mid-March because we will notify the licensees around February and send them the renewal paperwork in February, and then they have to come in and apply. If you're friends with any licensees, please tell them to come early because a 30-minute wait versus a 5-hour wait, you know, we're even open on Saturdays during that time because it is that busy. For taverns and nightclubs, which tend to be the more contentious ones, those are up for renewal in September 2019. You should start seeing
September
2019. So September 30th is the deadline. So you should start seeing stuff around mid-September. But with the bulk of the placards coming up around October for those. I don't think you have a lot of taverns and nightclubs, so you're looking at April being probably your busiest time. And I'll make my rounds around to the ANCs to remind them I'm here for support and all of that. Again, you kind of handle the Class A, so now the rest of the commissioners have to deal with the on-premises ones. Those aren't fun. We are working currently on, well, the mayor is proposing extended hours for our licensees, kind of like our holiday extension hours program. And these are for the All-Star game and for the World Cup. So all establishments that don't have settlement agreements that prevent them from operating additional hours can come in and apply for extended hours during those 2 events. It allows them to operate until 4 a.m., to sell alcohol until 4 a.m., and then to also operate 24 hours if they're selling food.
World Cup and what?
All-Star game.
Baseball.
Yes, baseball
So
all-star
if
game.
the World Cup is 3 weeks, it's sort of every night during those 3 weeks.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can send you more information if you're interested. Yeah, so if they have a settlement agreement that restricts their hours, they obviously cannot participate.
Unless they come to us, right?
Yeah, so they would have to come and ask for an amendment. It's worth considering if you write a settlement agreement that if you're okay with them participating in our extended hours program for New Year's Eve, for these kinds of events, you might want to write a little clause in the settlement agreement that says if the board has a approved holiday extension or event extension, they can participate. Sometimes ANCs forget to write that, and then they're kind of in a rush around New Year's Eve is usually when we start to see the problem because everybody wants to be able to be open like everyone else. So, just a little asterisk saying that they can participate in these programs is helpful if you want to. No pressure. If you want them to continue to operate normal hours, you can certainly write that in their settlement agreement as well. Does anybody have any questions for? Yes.
Are you going to provide training for ANC commissioners?
I do provide training for ANC commissioners. We'll see it in 2019. It'll be around February is when I provide it to the commissioners. So we do anticipate a lot of new commissioners, and so I want to make sure they're properly trained. But as I said, I try to make my rounds around the ANCs. So.
But there'll be some definite dates of.
Definitely. We usually have 3. One's on the weekend, one's at night, and one's during the day.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I do have one. So this is an issue that came up in this flurry of agreements we had, and we talked a little bit about it, but I'm hoping we can raise the issue, which is that ANCs are provided with notice under the law when there's a renewal, but we are not provided with contact information for the applicant. So this is part of why it took me a while. I had to actually chase down applicant contact information.
Yeah.
Is there anything that can be done to facilitate that? Is there anything we could do to encourage the city to make it easier for us to have contact information for applicants?
What I'll do is I'll take a note. I'll talk to the director about it. We are required to follow the Freedom of Information Act, but in the Freedom of Information Act, it also protects people's personal identification. So your personal email, we can't provide your personal email. A lot of times we're kind of redacting personal addresses, even though they are part of the record. People can obviously dispute that. Personal phone numbers, we don't give that out. We really can only give out business information. And a lot of times licensees, especially some of these storage licensees, they don't necessarily have a big business, so that it's kind of more of a personal email situation that we really can't provide. But I will talk to the director. I mean, I'm sure there's multiple ways we can kind of go about that. It's possible that on a application we can request business information. I'll look into it. I'll think about it for you.
Okay, because there is a contact and a phone number listed on each of the original applications.
On the placard.
And the original placard.
Yeah.
It's the renewal that doesn't include that information. And in some cases, it's changed. They have a new attorney, for example.
Yeah.
It just makes it hard for us to. It adds an unnecessary level of effort to a process that, as you already mentioned, they all come at once. So it's a lot of work, and it would make our lives easier. So.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a FOIA officer, and we try to stay in compliance, and I can talk to her about it and see what we can provide. I'm not sure that people have the right to waive their. I don't know. I'd have to look into it. I'm not an attorney, so.
Well, we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Does anybody need more business cards, or?
Can you bring those cards up here? Thank you, Teresa.
No thanks.
Anything else?
So we are going to move right along, surely into the discussion of the settlement agreements. Perhaps you would like to kick that off.
So we have 5 online-only license renewal applications at 4221 Connecticut tonight. We have 1 representative from First Vine here, and I'll give him a chance to introduce himself in a moment. He's been wonderful in working with the ANC. By way of background, there is a wine storage facility called Domain at 4221 Connecticut. They lease space to a variety of online-only retailers. So all of these applications are renewals for existing licenses. None of the applicants actually, sell alcohol to individuals on their premises or have alcohol consumed on their premises. So they're all online only, generally small. So we have worked with all 5 business owners to sign very similar settlement agreements with minor variations in language or hours, depending on what their license allows them to do. The most important things, I think, in terms of our community concerns have just been noise in the alley, hours of garbage disposal, illegal parking, and things like that. So it covers all of those things, and I just want to thank very much all of the applicants, R Squared, Selection, Sompix, First Vine, Seller Training, and A-Team Importers for being wonderful community members. We're happy to have them, and they've been great working with us. So I don't know if I need to provide any additional detail.
Well, I have a question, but maybe we should.
But yeah, I'd like to give Tom a chance to introduce himself. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, and Tom, as you do this, I'd love to sort of understand the business model a little bit more and to understand whether other liquor stores in the neighborhood might be adversely affected or what that dynamic looks like.
Sure. My name's Tom Nathan. I'm the owner of First Vine. I import wine from France, Spain, and Italy, and possibly Portugal later this year, I'm hoping. I don't speak Portuguese, so it's tough because some of my producers don't speak English. But I bring them over and then I retail them to the public online. So it's delivery only in the district, and then I can ship to 13 states. So people order online, I go to the warehouse, I get the wine, pack it up, deliver it myself usually. Sometimes I hire somebody to deliver and take it all to FedEx if it needs to get shipped out. So as far as the business goes, the wines that I carry are not available from anybody else in the district, and in most cases they're not available from anybody else in the United States. I get people who are interested in wines they haven't seen before. And also, I get a surprising amount of people who have visited, say, the Southern Rhone Valley in France and visited one of the wineries that I buy from. And those are the kind of people who order from me. Plus, of course, everybody I'm related to and all of my friends. I think there is a perception that we may siphon off some business from on-premises only establishments. I don't think that I do because they don't carry anything that I have. I don't carry the things that they have. But there is, I suppose, a possibility that, if an online retailer is carrying something from California, say, that because they don't have to buy it through a distributor, that they could potentially offer a lower price than an existing on-premises establishment. I have not seen that happen. I think that in general, in my experience in talking to wine shop owners, that a 20% premium for the convenience of walking in the door and taking it away with you is something that people are almost always willing to pay. Because with me, you're not going to get it. If it comes into your head that you want it, you order it online. I cannot bring it to you in a half hour, whereas you can walk to your the one right there on Connecticut, if they're open, and get whatever, a bottle of something that you will want, and you can have it for dinner that night. I went to a conference in California a couple of years ago where there was a presentation about. Well, there were lots of presentations about how people select wines and what people think is important. But one of the things that stuck with me is that people make decisions about their meals and the beverages that are going to accompany those meals generally within a 60-minute period of consuming them. So for us online retailers, it would be very difficult for us to fulfill that kind of time frame. Now, I get customers who have tried my wines and they like some particular ones and they order them in larger quantities, and maybe they won't go out to their wine shop. But I guarantee you, they will get tired of every single one of my 4 rosés, and they will want something different, and they will venture out and get something. Plus, you know, there are times when it just doesn't work out for delivery. They have to be home. Somebody over 21 has to sign for it. I can't leave wine on anybody's doorstep. And our ABRA representative isn't here. I wanted to ask her about her. They actually test us. Once a year, I will get an order, and I will show up, and there will only be a minor person there. And I have learned, because I get a letter every year afterwards saying that I passed the test, that this is what they do. So you know, we try to follow the rules. We don't want to undercut the retailers. I mean, I go and buy wine from retailers. I don't drink just the wine that I import myself. In many cases, we work together on events. I sell to a lot of the same caterers that Calvert Woodley sells to, so you know, I don't feel that we compete with one another. They also import directly from France, I know, and also from Italy. So they have the same model, except then they sell it in the store.
And you mentioned that, I can't remember how you phrased this, but you do business in 13 states, or this type of business is allowed in 13 states?
Retailers can ship to 13 states.
Okay.
Wineries are allowed to ship to 42 states. But so far, states have restricted out-of-state retailers.
Especially Washington, Oregon, and California.
No, actually, they allow it because they think the more the merrier. No, New York State doesn't allow it. Delaware, I don't know why. With Delaware,
I'm sorry.
And anyway, no, I know. I appreciate the questions.
And how are you taxed?
In the district, we pay the 10% sales tax. It gets added onto every order. I pay my sales tax quarterly. For Virginia, I have to, when I ship to Virginia, because I can't physically take the wine over the line into Virginia, even though I can see it sometimes, you know, depending on where I am, I have to actually ship it. I have to submit a Virginia sales tax form quarterly, and then there's also a bottle fee in Virginia that I have to pay. Most of the other states that I can ship to do not require that I collect sales tax for those sales. You know, California doesn't, Oregon doesn't, Washington doesn't. Ohio, I have to collect sales tax. I also operate some of my out-of-state sales through a site called Vino Shipper, and in that case, Vino Shipper takes care of paying the taxes, and I just fulfill the order, slap the label on it, and take it to UPS.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience?
Natan, Natan.
And Tom, did you get a copy of Sarah's card?
I did not.
I have one. And if you need anything, just let me know.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, in that case, I'd like to move that ANC 3F approve the 5 settlement agreements and submit them with a letter of support to ABRA.
Second. We have a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Vote is 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Let us know if you need anything.
I will. Good evening, everybody.
Thanks.
Where's the bottle of wine?
Yeah.
I don't think we're allowed to accept that.
We are moving to the
It's
Van Ness
cold
Main
and
Street
it's-
public art proposal and grant request discussion. This is a 15-minute discussion, and it's 8:37.
You need to click.
Sure.
Can you see from where you are?
this mic, if that's okay. So again, it's Teresa from Van Ness Main Street, and we've been working on a project for Van Ness for wayfinding, and wayfinding means finding your way using many different opportunities, but we want to be unique and identify Van Ness. So we started working on this project. I can get it to move to the next one. Sorry.
Down here.
There we go. So our process, which we followed, was that we decided as our design committee, we have 3 committees, and the design committee was in charge of this, that we really wanted to do something different, as I said, and so we did an RFQ to artists in the DMV, District, Maryland, and Virginia. RFQs, requests for quotes, qualifications, sorry. And so we got 8 arts organizations, artist teams submitting to us, and our design committee actually took a look and weeded out the artists we did not feel would be appropriate for our mission, and we ended up with 3 artist teams that we invited in to come and meet the community, because part of this process is that it's not just about Van Ness Main Street, but it's about the community and how we can work with an artist that would reflect the feelings of the community. So we had a community meeting. It's a public meeting where the artists came in and they listened to the community. They also toured the area, and they got a lot of really good information from participants. Then they went back and they were provided a stipend after that, and they came to our design committee and made formal presentations. And so they, all 3 of the artist groups came in, and they made really good presentations, and our design committee then selected the artist team to create the work. And then that, of course, went to our board of directors for approval. So the artist team that we selected is called After Architecture, and they really listened to the community about the feelings for Van Ness and all the different opportunities here. Some of their work, this is some of the work that they've done previously. We've had them come in the community a couple of times to present, by the way, after they were selected, so we didn't want to pay for them to come tonight from Roanoke. So you got me, but they do a much better job at their presentation. But this is the type of work that they've done. The piece on the very right is on a pier in San Diego. The piece in the middle is on a walkway, and then the piece on the left is at a university campus. All of their pieces are very durable and really reflect the environment. So when we were talking with them and when we sent our RFQ out, we talked about 3 nodes that we've identified in Van Ness to highlight with public art for wayfinding. One is Albemarle, the next one is Wyndham, and the last one is Van Ness in Connecticut. So what they discovered here when they talked to the community is the real value people have for Rock Creek Park and the canopy it provides, but also the uniqueness of Van Ness and its international character and its history. So they're calling this project Canopy, and what they did is they took a look at the park and the trees and the whole DC area, and they felt that was a good way for them to start envisioning what they would produce. So they did a lot of work on history of the area, so these are some old plats that they found and did some review of them to highlight. And of course, all of this is inspiration for them. This is actually in Soapstone Valley when they found archaeological finds some years ago. And then, of course, this is Connecticut Avenue in Van Ness, way long time ago, which we all had never seen this photo, but it's very interesting because they were using this again as looking at the tree line in the park. And these are some old buildings that were in existence on our main street in the 1920s. Looks a lot different now. And then this is kind of the building up of where we were in 1940. And this is in the park, actually. This is a fairly recent photo of people working in the park. So their thought is about the canopy as it celebrates the legacy of Van Ness as a leisure destination, rich in natural wonders, trails, and the pace that such an environment affords. Their whole idea is about pillars, much like tree trunks, and so they have come up with a really great design that can be utilized as wayfinding, but also can be utilized as a place for seating, as a place for activities in Van Ness. So how they thought about this, again, you see the tree trunk, so this is sort of their preliminary drawings. This is how artists work. They, just like when you're a writer, you come up with ideas and you play with them. They also were playing with sort of the top and the light of the tree, so if you look at this particular model, you'll see how they have kind of a light layered top, and that reflects kind of the top of the canopy. So then they also, again, looked at the locations and where they might want to locate. And so this is kind of their preliminary design of their canopy structure. They kept working on that. They liked it also that you could use the structures they're developing for put lights in for the holidays. You could even have a mini farmers market in these structures. And so, oops, now just stop. Sorry guys. There we go. So, what they, I have a very bad mouse, apologies. Okay, there we go. So this is just one of the potential structures. They can be in different sizes. They just placed it here just to give people an idea. This would be Albemarle, Connecticut. This is Wyndham Place, which would be a larger structure, much the same. That's the design of these tree trunks and the canopy. So this is how one could look. And that's that plaza in front of building 4250. And then the last setting is the corner of Van Ness and Connecticut. And so this is, they've envisioned this one as a little bit bigger, maybe opportunity to have more activities within it. So that's how it could be sited. Very functional. The other thing they talked about was the tree trunks could be used, their tree trunks, that is, the pillars could be used as individual elements pulled out for wayfinding throughout Van Ness. So let's say somebody wanted to find, they use Pierce Mill as an example, but someone wanted to find Soapstone Valley, there might be a pillar that indicates there's Soapstone Valley. They also had some great pictures that inspired them. This is a furniture store in 1937 here, and then the evolution of the Ice Palace. And then this, I love this. This is a building we just rehabbed, but that is the Albemarle house, which is right up the street. But they use this in their advertising to come to Van Ness. That's from 1958. So again, here is about the construction. The construction is brass, and it's folded sheet construction. And then they'll be using, they're developing finishing up options, but these will be extraordinarily durable and long-lasting because we don't want to have maintenance issues. And that's this particular artist team also was selected because they are very good at their pieces last a long time and they require little maintenance because they know about materials. And this is the bench finish, and then the canopy is a steel top. So this is the model. I have it in my office, but this is what one of them could look like. We also like this very much because it can be adapted. We don't have to have these sizes at each place. So we may have, because of the locations in the corners, we might have one that's a bit smaller than this. Or we might have this size, as you saw in the previous slide at building 4250. The piece about wayfinding that's important is our design committee takes wayfinding very seriously. And so this will be one element. We are also working with DDOT on potential signage and directional items in Venice, but we also are very cognizant as to what the district allows. So we're working with DDOT to talk about that. And we're also cognizant about if we too much stuff out there. So simplicity is better to us, but we would really like to at least, when you walk out of the metro, Metro's been experimenting with the compass that is on the ground and at least points north. We don't even have that here. When you get off the metro to find the embassies, which is what a lot of people are looking for, you don't know. So simple things, but that part of our work can be using these elements as wayfinding, but also there will be some signage, but we're just in the process of working on that now. But it's going to be simple. And we really wanted to do something that was long-lasting and would highlight, like, come to Van Ness, meet me at the canopy at X corner. And, you know, not just a banner that's up that cars can see, because we have 14,000 people who walk through, and a lot of people who have children, and a lot of people who maybe need a little break and a little bench to sit at. So that was kind of our thinking. And the artists really listened to the community about that. One of the things the community kept saying was that, you know, gathering places were really important to community members. They met with students from UDC in the architectural program as well, and that was one of the things that a lot of the students kept saying is we don't have a place to go to tell people where to meet us, to hang out, and so this kind of helps fulfill that. So we're really excited about it, and as you can see, this is kind of a different view of the model. But that's where we are right now, and so the next step is that we're looking to fundraise for this this initial start. We really would like to come to the ANC for funding with a match requirement, so that then we could go out and solicit grants from community members or from our local businesses, corporations, or the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities. So for us, having ANC help fund at least one of these initially would really help us get matching funds to move forward. I think a lot of people are going to be very interested in this because if you know anything about Van Ness, we have people who have really, really high expectations and really like projects that are well thought out and that are really community driven. So we worked really hard to make this project as community driven as we can. The next steps are that we will be fundraising for this, and then we hope to have the first one installed, at least starting to work on it by July. It probably will take 6 to 9 months to get the installation done. The artists have selected the first area that they would like to place the piece is on the public space in front of Building 4250. So we're in the process of also talking with our new, just press it again. And we're in the process of talking with Bernstein. Even though it's public space, we'd like them to make sure that they have input on this. But that's the most logical place for us to put it initially. There's a lot of steps in this, and as you all know who've done any kind of building, there's a lot of approvals we'll have to get. The great thing is that the team we're working with, they're very experienced, and so they can hit the ground running versus somebody who's not ever done this before. And I think the other thing people probably are asking about is safety. They are tall, and they will be made out of safe material. They'll also be lit at night, which we really like that because again, there's a lot of dark corners in Van Ness, especially like the area of Wyndham and Van Ness. Although we're getting some new street lights, so that's exciting. But that also I think will help highlight Van Ness. And playing with light is another thing that we've talked about, and of course the Days In is another opportunity, and we did take the opportunity to do that. So that's kind of where we are right now. These pieces are between $60,000 to $70,000, including everything. If we do a smaller area, I think the cost will go down. But the initial piece will probably be one of the bigger pieces. So we'll be looking to get funding to help push us forward to move on the first piece. And it's timely because Bernstein will be taking over that building in another year, and they're already starting to work on leasing the retail. So it all kind of fits together. And I guess the last thing is, if you've noticed at Wyndham in Connecticut, we're going to have 2 new stoplights and new new street lights that just were completed today. So that's going to be really exciting. We should be able to walk across the street 2 different ways. So we'll have opportunities.
Teresa, so I think we're about at our 15 minutes. I'm happy to extend the discussion. I don't know how much the commissioners would like to cover tonight versus in separate meetings, but should we extend by 10 minutes or so? You guys comfortable with another 10 minutes of discussion? I'd like to make a motion
Do
for
people
that.
have questions? Can you read some of your
We
questions?
have a couple, so let's do a couple commissioners have questions tonight, or I don't know, Naomi, do you have any, or why don't we go ahead and just extend by 10
Yeah, let's
minutes?
extend.
All those in favor? Okay, great. Let's go ahead and tee it off if you guys want to ask any questions.
Well, I think a question that we probably all have is a little bit more details about the fundraising plan. I know you had floated requests with us that we've also had given you some feedback that's not even possible with the money reserves we had. But how would a partial allotment or from the ANC, how would that be used, and how do you think about structuring to make sure we get to an outcome?
Well, I think a couple of things. Anytime you have a match, it's like WAMU and they do their fundraising and they say, we have a member-to-member match. That's exactly, it's powerful because it shows that they're not going to get the money unless you can match it. And so that's why if we requested this, I think requiring a match would be super helpful to us because then we can go out and say, the ANC is committed to funding this, through X time, and so we need to get a match to help support that, which will make a huge difference. I'd love to have all of it from the ANC, but that's not going to happen, and that's not the way you should do proper fundraising anyway. So, and the other part of getting some ANC funding, and also just it just gives us credibility. We worked really hard to get the community and the public involved in this, and this is just another step. But we're committed to finding funds to help make this happen.
And can you just give a little bit sense of sort of the concrete steps you're taking now to find funds?
Well, I have not started anything yet until we had this meeting. We have had some preliminary discussions with some grant organizations about funds, maybe not for this particular area, but other areas, because we want to apply to the DC Commission for the Arts. But that's city money, and ANC money can't match city money, so we would ask them for another area, for one of our other areas for the sculpture. But we will be, doing like a fundraising plan to actually start talking to some potential neighborhood collectors who might be interested in funding a piece like this. So I have a couple of meetings scheduled to discuss with some collectors their thoughts on the process as well. But we'll drop, we don't have a complete fundraising plan because we wanted to wait and meet with the ANC and then start moving forward. So the board just approved this like a month and a half ago. So.
Shirley, how do you visualize this through our budget process, treasury or grant or special projects process?
We would treat this probably as a special project and not as part of our traditional grant. Would be heavily involved since we are, the managers of the fiscal health of the ANC and the bank account. So that's, I think, as that will be an important step as we move forward to decide what process we'll use for this. It is much larger probably than a typical grant would be, so we look forward to continuing to speak with you about that, and we'll flesh out what that process will look like. And it would certainly be a formal proposal and review process.
It's not a
would
problem.
ask you to submit something and vote on it subsequent to speaking about it publicly.
And I wanted to mention that we get some of our funding from the Department of Small and Local Business Development, and they're very supportive of the project. It's unique because a lot of the main streets put banners up, but they're really very supportive of thinking outside.
Which group is this, Teresa?
The Department of Small and Local Business Development, DSLBD. They're very supportive of this because it is unique, and it also had a lot of public input, which they really like in projects.
question for you, Teresa, is I was really glad to hear you talk a little bit about the fact that you're coupling this with an effort to work with the city on traditional wayfinding.
Yes.
I think I probably didn't catch that when we saw the presentation before, and it was probably my main concern because I think they're beautiful, but I'm not sure you could really, from what we saw, you might not necessarily be able to use it in such a practical way. Although the wayfinding built into it is, I think, part of the beauty.
It'll be part of a broader package. And I mean, the issue right now with signage in the district is they are rewriting some of their signage legislation because of the big illuminated signage issues they've had. And so we're trying to get the right person at DSLBD to come and talk with us. But about 10 years ago, the city did kind of an overall study of signage. And I don't know if you remember, but there would be like one sign on top of another sign on top of another sign, and they'd all say different things for the same thing. And so I think they have worked on that. And so we're just trying to get the right person so that we don't go down the path of saying, here's what we want to do, and then we can't do it.
I have a couple of questions, but anybody else in that is going to go to Ms. Gray from EDC.
Maybe I missed this, but have you presented these plans to the public?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
After they were?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
In what way?
We had a public meeting, and it's also been in the Forest Hills Connection.
In Forest Hills Connection, okay.
And it's on our website.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
I have some closing questions, but I'm going to violate protocol and go to the audience here.
This is as a resident, not as a university representative. So 2 questions. What measures did After Architecture use to determine that these particular pieces represented the neighborhood? And where 4250 is concerned, I know part of the conversation is having outside eating spaces for whatever particular retail spaces go there. So how would such a big structure affect visibility of those retail spaces?
Well, that's why we're meeting with Bernstein to map that out so that it's in the right location before we do anything. We want to consult with them because we need to talk to them about the retail that they're going to be putting in there. And then in terms of After Architecture and the vision they had, that's what they do. That's what artists do. So they met with community members, a lot of people, and the gathering that they got back is how they decided on the kind of sculpture they put together. Now, mind you, we had 2 other artist groups that we interviewed, and theirs were so much more reflective of what the community had talked about and the vision. And it, they really looked at the future and they looked at the past and the park to come up with what they did. Plus, they heard people say, we want seating, we want something unique, we want a gathering space. So that's how they did that. They're not going to be orange; they'll be brass. No orange, no. Mm-mm. They will not be painted. No. Yeah, I have the model.
Teresa, what do you envision now as the next steps with us and the chronology?
Well, I think that you can let me know whatever you'd like me to submit, and I have budget, etc. And then I think Commissioner Jakovchik told me that he'd like to wrap this up at the next meeting and then move forward. So that's kind of what
that sounds good. And I think maybe the grants committee and probably all of us will need to talk internally, just in terms of what kind of information should be in an application, what degree the grant application helps, and what other information.
And I think it's the important thing about this is it's going to be something tangible, and for the community, we really. We decided not to do banners because when you start doing banners, you have to change them every 6 months, and it's very expensive. So when you total up over a period of 10 years, you would spend the same amount, but you'd be wasting. And this is giving the community something that's actually going to be tangible for us to use and enjoy.
I have one last question. As we move forward, one of my primary questions is just sort of the severability of these projects, both in terms of time and space, but also just from a legal standpoint, fundraising. If we support one of the structures, how does that influence the funding on other structures, or what's the relationship?
I don't think there is one. I think we start out with one, and that's the catalyst. I can say we would go other sources for the other sculptures.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if it precludes, how district money is viewed in terms of grant money.
No, I think this would be fine because, we're going to go get outside funding, not from the district, to match the ANC funds.
that with the next project, it might be district money.
Right, but that's a different project.
Well, that's my question is, why is it a different project? It's differently located. It's
Right.
semantics, but...
No, it's differently located and might be different looking, smaller, so they're going to be 3 separate projects.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. I'm sorry. Andrew, did you have a...
Yeah. So let me just understand the way the matching thing works. I'm almost understanding it as sort of a conditional. We
Yes.
allocate the money and we say we give this to you on the condition
That we get a match.
in X amount of time you get a match.
Yep.
Okay, so if the matching or whatever doesn't happen,
We don't
then-
get the money.
Okay, so I'm understanding it
Yeah,
properly.
yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah, no,
I-
it's simple, and I mean that's how I used to make grants, and that's
that
how
makes
grants
us
do it.
That makes me certainly feel
Yeah, yeah, and it helps us a lot. I mean, you know, it really does.
okay.
It works for everyone.
So when does our next meeting in June is June 19th?
Yeah.
June 19th, so we should probably try to at least have something more than a week ahead of time.
Yep.
Let the
Oh,
community
definitely.
review that as well, and hopefully we'll have to
Definitely.
get sooner to figure out the structure of the
Yeah, we have to
application.
talk about what to
Right,
ask for.
what you
Yeah.
want. Right.
Right. Any
Well,
other?
we have open lines of communication
Yes.
with Teresa
Sure.
and Van Ness Main Street,
Right.
so we'll certainly be in touch in the near future.
And to community members, if you have any questions, just send me an email. I'm happy to talk with you. I'm happy to put you in touch with the artists. Send their website. They're fantastic, and I think it's going to be great.
Great. Thank you very much. This is exciting. It's a beautiful project. Any, I guess there aren't any. Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is the Citizens Climate Lobby presentation on carbon pollution. I don't know if there's anybody here from that organization. Anybody here tonight to talk about carbon pollution? Okay. We are now moving on to ballot initiative 77. We have a discussion of 25 minutes. I'm not sure it's going to take that much time. If possible, if you guys could limit your introductory remarks to 10, 15 minutes at most. If that's... Yes.
In the discussion?
Yes. Are there, how many,
We're not doing the carbon thing?
was there anybody from the carbon program here?
I'm just making sure.
Yeah, there's someone from the restaurant community center for these programs.
All right, is there a commissioner that's tracking this particular issue? I don't forget how this came about. Maybe Pat and I were doing this. How many? Okay.
So we have people speaking for and against this? Okay.
So let's go ahead and do the restaurant group first. That's great. Who is here for that? Great. We have 25 minutes. If you could take 10 minutes for each side, and if you need a little bit more, that's fine. But let's try to do that, and then we'll have probably 10 minutes of commissioner discussion. And welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. Should I talk into you or does it matter?
That microphone is not for the room, but for the online,
Got
for
it.
the tracking. If you could identify yourself and organization and everything like that.
Sure.
For the record.
This is the people
Yeah,
before.
including that.
So my name is Jessica Yanez, Jessica Yanez, Yanez, and I am an organizer at the Restaurant Opportunity Center. It is a restaurant worker center that we have been in DC since 2009, and we focus on advancing the wages and working conditions inside of restaurants. Because unlike the rest of labor in this country, the standards in restaurants have lagged behind. So Initiative 77 is essentially an initiative to increase the minimum wage for people who earn tips. Right now, they can be paid as little as $3.33 an hour, and the rest has to come from the tips that they earn from customers. And so, the initiative itself would increase the minimum wage for people that earn tips about $1.50 per year through 2025 until it reaches $15 per hour, so that they get the full base pay plus their tips by 2025. And so the reason why the whole thing started is because when you look at depending on tips to make rent and get groceries and healthcare and transportation and all of these things, you essentially start to chase tips. Where can I maximize my earning potential? So that depends on a lot of things. It depends on the location of the restaurant. It depends on the concept. It depends on the price point. And it also depends on you, right? Your gender, your age, your race, and your willingness to flirt even, right? So a lot of those things are outside of your control, and it will dictate how much you can potentially earn in tips. Now, aside from those problems, when the tips are actually where the wages are coming from, one, they're not guaranteed, so we never know how much it's going to be. But when the tips are where your wages are actually coming from, that means not only do the wages come from there, but so do overtime wages come from there, right? So if the employer doesn't feel that overtime cost, they can schedule you for as many hours as they want because it doesn't cost them anything. And so, and even if you said, well, I would like to not work that extra shift, that sounds like you're saying I don't want to work, right? Or if I had something else. And so you're put in a situation where you don't want to say no because you ultimately want to conserve your job, especially if in your mind you've already said this is where I'm going to maximize my tips. So the other thing is that since the hourly wage is so low, it basically ends up all of it going to taxes. So you won't actually get a paycheck at the end of the pay period. And so when we think about tips subsidizing wages and overtime wages, we also have to think about, well, if you're earning so little, you probably qualify for public assistance, right? So we're also paying for health care through our taxes and education through taxes and housing and food because the wages are so low. So especially when in DC, I believe the statistic is 58.9% of tipped workers are single mothers. So at the end of the day, we realized this custom, because it is a custom, is deeply rooted in racism and discrimination, where when we developed our Fair Labor Standards Acts, those were very, very deep-seated issues. And when most people that were tipped workers were people of color, especially black people, the wage was set at 25 cents an hour, the minimum wage, and for tipped workers it was set at 0. So we've made it all the way to $2.13 by 2018. In DC it's a little bit higher, $3.33, because this is a food city. And so at the end of the day, it's a gender justice issue, racial justice issue, and it's an economic justice issue, especially in DC, where you have such a huge income inequality, where even though the median income is $100,000, you don't see the Native people of color population in those jobs. So while some places can generate a lot of tip income, not everyone is getting hired in those places, and they never will. So our members have been working on this for about 5 years now. We finally got on the ballot, which is probably why you're barely hearing about it now. But here we are. So do we do questions after, or do they go now?
Would you guys like to do maybe 1 or 2 minutes of questions as the commissioners, and then let them go, and then have a freer discussion from both sides? Or
it might be helpful to hear.
I'd rather hear both sides.
I just have a clarification question. Well, you
just one. Yeah, that'd be great.
But tipped workers, what is that? Just service workers? Who are tipped workers in a typical restaurant style?
So in restaurants, it's going to be your servers, your bartenders, your food runners, your bar backs, back waiters, bussers, and that's all I can think of. I kind of went out of order of what I usually go. And then you also have other tipped workers, right? You have, not in restaurants. and so it would affect them as well.
So coat checks or
Yeah, so your baggage porters and your, at the airport, the wheelchair guys.
and would it also extend to beauty salons or?
I believe so.
Can I have one clarification question? Is there a law in the district that if your tips don't come up to the minimum wage, the employer has to pay the difference?
It is, and so essentially what you see happen is that if you're at a place that's not generating, the tips that you would expect when you say, I'm going into this tip position because I could potentially make unlimited amount of tips, what really ends up happening is that you get capped at minimum, right? Because they say, well, you made up the difference. Like, that's what the law says, right? And so that's if you even have the courage to say, hey, boss, like, I wouldn't really ask you this, but I didn't make enough tips and I got to pay rent or whatever it is. Or that if you even know what the law is, right? Or if you speak English or whatever the case may be. In restaurants, you see refugees, immigrants, whether they're documented or undocumented, returning citizens, people that don't have a lot of power in society. So the chances of them speaking up in that situation, not high.
Thank you very much. Can you, and maybe a same question to both of you, just what organizations are siding with you or sponsoring you, or who your coalition partners are?
Oh, I don't know them by memory. The one that comes right off the top of my head is All Above All, Trans United Fund. Yeah, it's on our it's on that website. That's on that thing.
Okay.
So you can
Any
see.
unions?
Not that I know of. Not that I know
So
of.
onefairwagedc.org.
.org. Mhm.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Please stand by. We'll probably try to get some questions. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Maria Daring. I'm actually a commissioner myself. I'm an ANC commissioner, so thank you for your service. I know it's always a fun time. I'm a commissioner at ANC 4C.
Harry, B-E-R-R-Y.
B-A-R-R-Y.
Thank you.
4C Road 2. So I live just east of here, or across Rock Creek Park. I'm here tonight, to talk about the Save Our Tips campaign and why we are in opposition to ballot initiative 77. Besides being an ANC commissioner, I work for a restaurant and bar owner named Jeff Dawson, who started Buffalo Billiards about 27 years ago. He has owned about 25 bars here in the city. He's from D.C. He grew up here in Ward 3. He lives in Palisades. And I do special projects and help him as an entrepreneur. And when this came up in our meetings in about February, when we learned about Ballot 77, he was very concerned, along with his co-owners and other colleagues in the field, and he has essentially put me on loan.
What's his name?
Jeff Dawson of Tin Shop, DC. And he has put me on loan to help Save Our Tips, which is a campaign that was organized around this issue. So that's a little bit about me. I just always like to frame it that way. So a couple of points, and then my friend and colleague Michael is going to introduce himself. He's the general manager of Rose's Luxury, which is a Michelin star restaurant here in the District of Columbia in Barracks Row. So a couple of points. Just I want to specifically state something that was just mentioned around the Wage Theft Act of 2014. It's a Wage Amendment Act of 2014 that the District Council passed and enacted in 2015.
What was it called?
The Wage Amendment Act.
I think it's the Wage Theft Amendment.
Wage Theft
Amendment
Wage
Act of 2014.
Theft Amendment Act, and that ensures that every employee makes at least minimum wage. So this concept that there's a sub-minimum wage, or that people are making a lower minimum wage, so of course they can't have a livable wage at $3.33, which is what our tipped minimum wage is right now. This ensured that everyone becomes whole after their hours at an establishment, so that it's the tip credit combined with the tips that they make. And if for some reason they only made it only adds up to $8.50, Right now, the minimum wage is $12.50, which means that their employer has to submit a quarterly wage report every quarter. Every restaurant in the District of Columbia, every bar and restaurant has to submit this online to the Department of Employment Services, and they have auditors, and they review the quarterly wage report to ensure that there's no workers that are not making minimum wage. And they actually levy and use fines again to ensure that this system works. It's a $1,500 fine that they have, and if over time you get fined too many times, then you actually can lose your license. So I wanted to very much drive that home, because there's going to be a lot of things that honestly that I just heard were really misleading, which why we are working so hard against this. And I'm representing the entire restaurant community and bar owners and tipped employees, the people by the thousands that are working against this, because ultimately, if this, and he's going to explain the math and explain how this works. But
I'm sorry, you're representing?
Yes, through Save Our Tips, I'm representing thousands of owners and restaurant workers who are here in the District of Columbia.
And they're members of that organization, or how do we?
They have signed a petition. We have done a training. We've received their names. They have come to town hall meetings. They're putting materials up. You're going to start seeing, if you haven't already seen it, there's a lot of establishments that have their Save Our Tips work up.
That's the owners, right? The workers?
The workers and the owners together are combined in this campaign. Are we still asking questions, or do you still want me to?
Please continue, yeah.
So there has been a huge interest in keeping the system we have, and we strongly are urging folks to vote against this. The mayor has come out complete against this on last Friday, as well as Chairman Mendelson has come out against this, and pretty certain many more council members are going to follow suit. So I'm going to pass this over to Michael so he can explain some of the other basics beyond the Wage Theft Amendment Act.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Richmond. I'm the general manager of Rose's Luxury. I've been working in the restaurant industry for about 16 years, so about since I was 17. A little bit of disambiguation: when you receive a check that is for $0 because you only made $3.33 an hour, it's because you're getting paid out in tips in cash. I've had checks like that. That's how that works. So if you make $200 on a Saturday night in cash, you don't declare it, it doesn't go through payroll, you get a check just for the sub-minimum wage, which winds up being $0 in cash. As restaurants kind of go through the evolution of getting everything onto a payroll system, that practice kind of goes away. So I just wanted to
As a clarification, when tips are left on credit cards, which most of them are,
that all goes through. Yeah, that all goes through payroll.
That all goes to payroll.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily $200 in cash at the end of the night.
No, and operators don't want to hold on to that kind of cash. And from an operator standpoint, it's hard for me to give everyone out their cash in the night. It's easier to go on checks. Servers are getting accustomed to it. It's kind of evolving out of that.
Right, but that's not off the books and things because it's up.
It depends. Every business owner is different. And I just kind of want to talk to you about kind of what are the ramifications of what happens here. And how does it translate into the servers? So, like was said before, the quarterly reports happen to kind of make sure that there's no wage theft. For my guys, and I'll just talk about my restaurant and my employees. I have 35 tipped workers, and for them to go from $3.33 to $15 an hour, I would have to drive $850,000 of revenue back into the restaurant to pay them just the increase in minimum wage. The problem is that my guys make more than that. If I were to cover all of their tips, so basically just recycle the money so that way they get the money back to them that they're currently earning right now, I would have to push probably $1.1 million back into the business. The problem is that it doesn't stop there. So at $1.1 million, I've now triggered percentage rent. Each restaurant in the district has a lease agreement with their landowner or with their landlord that has a threshold that if you surpass that threshold, you have to pay 6 to 8% on top of that for gross. So a couple of things here. Service charge is not tips. Service charge is controlled by the operator. And that goes to gross. So service charge is counted as gross, and it is not considered tips. Right now, tips are tips. Those are sacred. We can't touch those. Those go back to the servers. It's a 1-for-1. You get a $100 tip. I go through the payroll system. I pay it right back out to you. So keep going forward. we lose $80,000 in percentage rent. We've also lost the FICA credit now. So by utilizing a tip credit, we get a rebate back by the federal government. For a restaurant like the one I operate, we're looking between like $70,000 and $85,000 again. So right now we're 1.15 mil in the hole. That doesn't stop there because now we have triggered. What did we trigger? We triggered workman's comp. Workman's comp goes by servers' wages. So right now they're at $333. If they jumped up to 15, that's a 500% increase. If I tried to pay them what they're currently getting paid, that's $30 an hour. That'll trigger a 1,000 increase in workman's comp insurance. If your business is below a $5 million threshold and you've increased prices just to make sure that this goes through, just to get whole, you've now triggered the ballpark tax because anything over $5 million you have to pay to the stadium. That's about $5,000. So in the end, in all of this, we still haven't talked about diminishing returns or how price varies. So the idea of price elasticity, every dollar you increase on an item, the likelihood of it getting purchased drops 2.3%. So now I have to find the magic ratio of how do I get my guys to make the same amount of money that they did before by going through this. That's the best case scenario. The best case scenario for me and my restaurant and my workers is that they're doing exactly the same as what they're doing right now. The reality of the situation is operators like myself, business owners, they're not going to lose their business. They don't want to do that. But they're going to have increased costs, and that's going to have effect. And that effect is a combination of service charge, price increases, and lowering staff. So I would 100% guarantee that I have to look at my schedule, I'd have to look at my payroll and figure out which one of my colleagues, which one of the people that work for me, which one of those people I have to say, hey, I can't do it. I can't do it at all.
Essentially, this is a math problem, not a political problem. And one of the things that I find also most disconcerting is when you understand how these shifts are led and that servers actually like their shift work because they're able to work part-time, they can go get their graduate degree, they're going to school, they're doing, they're consulting and doing this on the side as a bartender, a variety of things. Some people are also full-time, but many people use it for that flexibility. But there's going to be actually reduced staff size, and for me, anything that triggers job loss is very disconcerting to me. And places are going to have to keep their labor costs down. They are going to have to cut staff. They're going to have to cut staff. And when you cut staff on the front of the house, that also means you're going to cut staff on the back of the house. The back of the house is not tipped employees. They're not a tipped employer, but they also are jobs. And so overall, you're looking at job loss. You're also looking, obviously, at increased menu prices, and you're not looking at getting any better service. Like, the way I look at it is if you're paying $14 for a burger somewhere, and all of a sudden that burger, between all these other pieces, is now going to be an $18 or $19 burger. At some point, as a customer, you're going to make also a volume decision about how many times you're going to eat out because of those increased costs to you. And then that's also going to affect then the volume of obviously the business that they're doing, which then goes to the bottom line of then not having staff on board. So
aren't we already paying the cost instead of you? I mean, by tipping, I am buying an $18 burger.
Correct. And I think if the moment was, let's just rework the money and let's just call it something different and then just pay them the same, I think that works. And I'd probably be on board with that. But the problem is that that's not the case. The problem is I can't just put one number, pull it from a different place, call it a rate, and then everybody's okay. It has ramifications. And you're right, is it about the same? Correct, but on the back end, it's not. It's basically I can give you $100, or I can start at that end of the table and everybody takes $5 on the way down before it gets to her. Right now, the employees are considered 333-hour employees that have to have the $15 minimum wage. That's kind of how it works.
That has to have $12.50.
Or that has to have $12.50 currently.
To $5
right. That's how the system's set up. So what you're doing now is we're changing it into, hey man, that's not the guy that I talked to about video games anymore. This is a $60,000 liability. Do we get rid of him, or do we increase prices by $5? And it changes the dynamic of tip workers. The one thing I can say is I employ more people at or better than the minimum wage than I ever could if you made me pay them the minimum wage.
You said it's a math issue.
How do we want to do the questions? Let's decide that, because I want to make sure we have even.
Okay. Well, you asked the other party multiple questions.
Yes, I'm just wondering. I just want to make sure we make some decision about it.
All right, so far we've
I don't want to get too far on.
We've spent about 20 minutes on this, and we could probably, out of fairness, go ahead and extend this another 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and just try to do, I think we're balanced with all respect, just go ahead and do 5 minutes aside and maybe start with one question from each commissioner or 2 questions and try to move it through. I think we can get, I don't know, what do you guys think?
I think we need at least 15 more minutes.
All right, let's do another 15 minutes.
I've got many. I'll limit it to 2 questions, but I have many.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the thing that I've found out in trying to explain to people is there's a lot of misconceptions, and a lot of people kind of don't. Some people just don't understand kind of how tip workers are paid and how the industry works in general.
Right, so let's. You have a motion for 15-minute extension.
Yes, so 15 minutes extension.
In favor of 15 minutes?
All
Okay.
right, so when we start?
You want me to start?
Yeah, start. We'll go in order with the table.
But I would like, I think,
if you'd like to join us.
If I ask a question, I'd like both.
I direct at the same time.
Yeah, let's direct at the same time. If you guys are comfortable.
Both
with that.
sides comment on how this has worked in other cities and states where this has gone into effect. My understanding is in cities like Seattle and San Francisco, they have booming restaurant businesses, and they have instituted this. What are the pros and cons, or what is your understanding of the situation in those places? And there are several states where they have a minimum wage to employees.
And why don't we start with you, and then the next question will start with you, if you'd like, if you have any comments on that.
So that's a great question. Currently, 7 states already pay full minimum wage plus tips. It's Alaska, Washington State, Oregon, California, Minnesota, Montana, and Nevada. A lot of tip workers in Nevada. And actually, Flagstaff, Arizona, of all places, recently adopted this. And then you're also seeing New York State is pushing for this. Pennsylvania is pushing for this. And
do we know any of the
I'd like to know the results.
The after effect or the consequences?
How was it affected?
Is actually pushing for this. And so what we see in the 7 states that already have it, and then I'll say a little bit about Seattle, is that obviously the wages are better, obviously, because the wage is higher. The tips are better. There's sales growth and there's job growth in full service restaurants. And then in Seattle, so we have chapters all over the country, one of them being in Seattle. And I just spoke to one of our members recently who has been, from dishwasher all the way to up to assistant general manager. He said, we were scared too when we went from 11 to 5 because we had all the same fears that people would not tip. We had fears that people wouldn't go out as much. Basically, the list that they just ran through, he was like, and so we took a wait and see approach, and none of that ever actually came to fruition. Obviously, that's just one person, but yeah.
So, do you mind if they get a chance to?
Yeah, so and I've gone down the rabbit hole so many times with the data that's being presented and how it's being manipulated. The tips aren't better. So I have San Francisco and CTAC's Bureau of Labor and Statistics report from 2017. We can go through, let's see, the bartenders made $17.51 an hour. Their base wage is $13. That puts it at $4.50 an hour. So the idea that the tips are better is misleading. What you're seeing is operators are going to more of a counter service model to where wage workers are just that, wage workers. So the idea is also that their system hasn't hit the boiling point yet, right? So these guys are still instituting this. It is a wait and see moment, but if for someone to say that it's booming, I think that's a little bit misleading. And I think that if we're going to apply it to here, we have to look at where we're at here. DC, and if you want to look at it from the 10th percentile to the 90th percentile, we're already outperforming Seattle and San Francisco. And what's that? In wages earned hourly. In fact, DC has a higher 10th percentile wage rate than San Francisco currently, and that's one of their one fair wage.
I'm just going to try to move this along.
Okay. So I have one other short question. Yeah. You had mentioned that your organization had many employees. Can you characterize these employees? And I'd like to hear what you say too. Are they the high earners? People who work at Rose's Luxury make a lot of money, a lot of tips. People in IHOP, our pizza place, maybe don't make a lot of tips. Are they in your organization too? And I'd like to hear what you say about that.
So, am I supposed to
Yeah,
answer
go ahead.
first? Okay, so I'm not sure who are members of ROC in the District of Columbia. I have yet to meet a tipped employee who is part of ROC. So I have met hundreds, if thousands of tipped employees, and they're from everyone from food runner, to all the tipped employees who are making their money from tips. So some restaurants make money from tips, and they receive tips, but they're not a tipped minimum wage worker. So bartenders and servers, food runners, and many of the other people that, different things. Like at the bars that Jeff owns, we have bartenders. We have bartenders that are tipped.
Help understand Bill's question here of just how you differentiate different size businesses, different clientele.
Yeah.
Rose's Luxury is not IHOP.
So we have 96% of all the restaurants in the District of Columbia are independently owned and operated. That is a statistic that is nothing like any other place in the country, which means there are basically 4 restaurants that are IHOPs. There's two IHOPs and a Denny's, and there's one other that are part of kind of a corporate chain. And we have 96% of our restaurants that are independently owned and operated. So whether they're fine dining or whether they're bars, or bistros or taverns.
But they're serving different clients.
Yeah.
Some people are willing to buy a $5 hamburger versus 50. So what does that look like?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in because my question, but you said it's a math question. You gave us the Rose's Luxury, but Rose's Luxury is clearly a if you take a restaurant,
we're all making more than minimum wage.
If you take a restaurant where the average check or bill is going to be $7, $8 for eggs and a cup of coffee or a sandwich, and so the average tip at that point is going to be $1.50 or $2 for that each individual. What's the math look like?
But that's where it comes in that nobody is making sub-minimum wage, because that's why we have...
Right.
The employer
would this
has to pay
improve
for
their
it.
lives without a dire outcome for the restaurant? Because you painted sort of a very
Right. So I think
dire
you
outcome.
touched on that because Rose's Luxury is a high volume restaurant. We're very famous.
Right.
We drive.
You're
we
worried
drive
about
a lot.
crossing $5 million. I
Right.
think there are a lot of restaurants
So
that would love to have that
understand
problem.
that I'm in the best case scenario.
Yes.
That I am the most beneficial scenario. Those guys that you talked about, those restaurants, those diners, they're even in a worse case than I am.
Why are they worst case if by law they have to make up, but their revenue isn't such that they're going to run into paying
Right.
all these additional costs
Because-
and taxes? Because they should be hovering right around that
So-
$15 or $12, whatever it is now already.
Yeah. So a lot of it will rely on the FICA tip credit. Because if you're doing like a $1 million restaurant, $50,000 at the end of the year is a lot of money. There's a lot of $1 million
Because
restaurants.
they'll now pay FICA $15 of wages per hour for
Correct.
each employee instead of $3.33.
Correct.
Why don't we
Everything's
give-
based on your pay.
Excuse
on
me,
your
we're
pay.
we're
on
going to
your
go ahead
wage.
and give you an opportunity.
I mean, I don't know that I have anything to say, but just 2 things came up in that you're right. Like, we're accustomed by culture to tip about 20%, which, when you think about it, doesn't make sense when you're at a lower price point place. So that person already is going to make less, right? And then I believe I read an article just last month about the sister restaurant, Pineapple and Pearls, that had a 25% price increase from one year to the next, right?
Mhm.
So,
Do you know that Pineapple and Pearls is a tip-free model?
right. But
Right.
the price...
Pineapple and Pearls is a tip-free model, and we had to increase the prices by 25% in order to make our bottom line.
And how are you doing?
Pineapple and Pearls?
Because my understanding is you can't
get
get
in
a
there.
reservation.
It's
So you
we're
seem to be doing pretty well.
so we do well. It's about $325 per person, and the model that we created, and we had the choice to create that model. And I was the one that engineered the model. I knew how to do it. It's interesting that when I've created a model that's no tip, the only one in Washington D.C. that's been sustainable, nobody from the ROC came and asked, "Hey, how'd you do that? How'd you pay for all of your employees' insurance benefits and do a tip-free model only open 4 days a week?" Talking about quality of life. But yes, we have a reputation behind us. We have a lot of operators in that restaurant that try to do the best that they can every single day. I don't know if the point of the tip-free model for us was that we didn't want the burden of paying for the entire dinner to be felt at the end of the day. So when you got the check at the end of the night for $675, that kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth for dinner. So that's why we wanted to do a prepay system, so that way you wouldn't see a bill. By doing a prepay system, we had to pay out our servers a different way than with tips.
But did you start that way?
100%.
I mean, I guess the question for me is, you're here talking about a restaurant that is of a similar caliber, and you're telling us you voluntarily imposed this at one of your other restaurants, which is doing exceedingly well. So much so, it's almost impossible to get a reservation. But if you do this citywide, it's going to be catastrophic for your
For
business.
Rose's, it will.
It's just hard to square those two things.
Yeah, but I guess the thing is that when you look at it, this way, when you opened up Rose's Luxury in 2013, there's a status of what the restaurant landscape looks like, and you set your model into place. Then, as you go forward, things change. This is one of those things that changes that will put Rose's at detriment. When we did Pineapple and Pearls, we set that into motion, knowing from day one that's what we were going to do. So the model changes, and the models aren't equivalent, and they're not the same. The way we pay out our servers is not the same. So I understand your point, but the issue is that you have all of the restaurants that are operating right now having the way they're doing business currently, and then forcing them to change from the system that they're currently operating into a $15 an hour world. Pineapple and Pearls is different because that was the goal from the get. We didn't have to change anything.
Let me, excuse me, we're going to do that. Are we working our way down? So you've got one more, and then we'll go to the audience after. We're going to go to the audience after the commissioner. Sorry.
That is, so...
That's how every ANC operates that way. Thank you.
What I want to understand is, so I'm sensitive to the business concerns here. I know that restaurants in DC operate on average on a 6% margin, and that the additional burden is different. So I'm not denying it. But I'm wondering how this is really different from the arguments that we hear about minimum wages in general. The minimum wage is increasing. All kinds of other industries are going to have to absorb it in exactly the same way. And the argument is always, and probably always will be, that increases in minimum wage and similar benefits lead to loss of jobs, which empirically rigorous research shows is true on the margins. It also results in lower poverty rates. So it's a counterbalance. And what I want to understand is how you see this as different from what, say, your retail counterparts are dealing with to ensure that people can survive.
Yeah, no, I think if you want to take, let's say, like a CVS, and they have maybe 20 employees that go from $10.50 to $11.50, versus a full-service restaurant that's having all of their employees going from
$12.50.
Or sorry, going to $12.50 to $13.50. You're looking at full-service restaurants that are being asked to take their employees from $3.33 to $15 an hour by 2025.
Well, no, they're taking their employees from $12.50 to. They have to make up that difference already.
Yeah,
if
but
people are making tips.
So that's with tips.
Let me offer her an opportunity. Go ahead if you had.
So, just two things. What we see in states that have one fair wage, 25% of people move from below the poverty line to over the poverty line. But it's what we already know. The other thing is, I think the biggest fear, or and I don't know, right, but this is just what I imagine, is that you're thinking, I'm going to continue to use the tip credit for 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24, and then in 25 I have to come up with the rest of this. And it's like, shouldn't the mindset be like, let me operate from if I had to do the whole thing from the beginning? That's just my initial thought. But you sound like you'd be an excellent consultant for businesses that need support.
So let me, if I do want to get to the audience, I'm trying to frame this question that I think, Jessica, you started out with a lot of these servers, and we were talking a little bit about unions, but that may not feel as empowered as they should be, or that can't go to their boss and maybe it's not Rose's Luxury, maybe it's a different type of restaurant where those issues arise. And so I'm trying to, in my own mind as I go home tonight, think about the math equation that you explained very well, and then think about the human equation. And we're here to sort of balance both and make sure the math equation drives human progress as well. And so just wondering if you could step out of your business model, step out a little bit to think about where and how these human equity issues for some of these other restaurants, some of these other workers, just, we get your point, but think of the other side, put yourself in the other shoes now. Where do you see their power? Where do you see their ability to negotiate in some of these other restaurants, or what are they not getting, or what are your suggestions? And I'm not sure I'm framing the question quite right, and I'm not sure how that goes to your idea, Jessica, but maybe you could just expand on that as well. But let's start with you folks.
I think that's the thing is, like, if Abra can come up and say, hey, you can call a hotline and talk about trash, right? We can do a better job to actually address the issues that you're talking about. And I think by changing the entire industry to a wage for everybody, I mean, the fact of the matter is the majority of the people that this is going to affect is going to negatively affect those people. So the intent might be good, but the results might be overwhelmingly bad. If it's talking about a lot of those restaurants having to let go workers or downsize, and then that makes it a problematic bill. If we want to talk about harassment towards servers, I'm all about that. I would love to talk about that. And I would love to talk about how operators can effectively change culture. Because the reality of the situation is when you talk about kind of how people are respected in the industry, it kind of goes the whole gambit. It goes to me, to my servers. It's the idea of, like, the customer's always right. That kind of lives out in the ether where people think that they can do whatever they want to us. And it has nothing to do with how we get paid. But in the moments of where there's a smaller operator or the diner person and trying to kind of reconcile that, I think that the main thing is we have to make sure that we're in compliance. And I think that the system that's in place as far as pay is concerned, I think that compliance is appropriate. I think a quarterly report, our accountant had to hire a full-time employee just to do all of the compliance 4 times a year. And I think that's a start. I think if we want to talk about wage theft and compliance on minimum wage, I think that's a start. And I think if we want to move towards, like, talking about all of the other issues, I mean, using the Abra example is great. It's, the ballot initiative is taking everything and changing it in hopes of identifying and helping out a small group of people, when I think we can just pass better laws than that.
Okay, thank you. Jessica,
I'm not sure that was a question that you asked, but I guess I could say something to that effect. Somehow this conversation always turns into an enforcement conversation, and it goes back to that, like, voluntary, like, employer voluntary quarterly report, right? And so I guess if we want to talk about enforcement, when you think about, if I am relying on tips, that means if I don't go to work, I don't make any money. If I'm working in a place where the tips are not coming, or it's not being made up, I'm not being made whole by the employer, usually what happens is that you move on to the next place. Why? Because I gotta make money. And when you talk about enforcing the tip credit, it's complex, right? You just said you have to hire a whole person to make sure that they're in compliance. So you put the onus on the worker to hold the employer accountable. And sometimes it's just not worth it, right? It's easier to just go to the next place. The problem is that then someone else fills in your shoes and they experience the same thing. But at the end of the day, if we had one, if everyone started at the same base wage, it simplifies that process. If you ever decide, like, I'm going to do the thing, this is how many hours I worked, this is how much I was supposed to get paid, this is how much I didn't get paid. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it's a tough question, but thank you. Andrea, to you.
Yeah, I have 2 questions. Actually, one is for you, Jessica, and sort of the flip side of it is for you guys. Are you looking for a net increase in income, or you're just looking to level off the income of tip wages in terms of the certainty of the income? So are you looking to have tips stay the same but the minimum wage come up so that the net income would go up? Or you're looking for some kind of an offsetting thing to go on so that the wage is sort of guaranteed and steady?
No, I mean, that's what the tip credit is. The point is to have the full base wage and keep your tips.
So you're looking for a net increase across the board in what people are taking home?
By 2025, yes. Which, who knows what the cost of living will be in DC by 2020, right?
Okay.
But I think that answers your question.
Okay, so what I was going to ask them sort of maybe makes a little bit less sense, because you were talking about this idea of a service charge. People are already used to paying, this amount plus if I saw service charges starting to appear, I may think about tipping less.
Correct.
Or much less.
Right. And
or not at all.
Typically, the service charge is a function of subtotal, so even if you do 20%, it's a net loss at that point. Because people customarily will tip on grand total, or total including tax.
Right, but would you be willing to increase the minimum wage if the service charge were something that the restaurant was collecting?
So, and I'll say, if all of the things on the back end didn't happen, I would be like, if I could just take tips and just filter it back down and call it wage and then we're good, I would totally be okay with that.
Except for the FICA and the workman's comp.
FICA, workman's comp, and then percentage rent.
Right.
So when we talk about that, we're talking about like a 30% push, 20%, 30%.
So you've basically got a lot of workers now that are off FICA and workman's comp and all this kind of business, and you don't want to pay to put them on.
No, so the thing is that tips. So when I run payroll, regardless if it's tips or if it's wage, I still have to pay all of my taxes out. So even if you get $1,000 in tips or $20 in tips, I'm paying the same amount of FICA percentage, and I'm paying same. The payroll doesn't change. It's all of the stuff behind that. The credit that we get will lose if we don't.
Everything
use
is
tips.
connected to what your wage is. So in the tipped credit model, that wage is $3.33 going to $5, and so everything is about that, which with the tips then making it whole.
Question to the audience with the woman here, and then Juanita. Maybe do you mind coming up to the mic real quick? I'm sorry, I just sorry.
I've worked in the restaurant industry for 30 years in New York, and this year I've employed people for a very long time. I think this is a huge mistake for Washington, D.C., and I think that the conversation was getting a little off track. That's why I was trying to raise my hand, so I apologize. I'm not used to the protocol here. But it's almost like pitting roses and pineapples and pearls as bad guys somehow, because if this goes into effect, they're not going to be hurt. They will remain in business. But the proven track record here, and this is going on in New York, and it's really, really bad, is that lower-end earners will not be employed any longer. They just convert to computer systems, place your own order. So what you end up is a net loss in jobs. So the opposite of what is intended is achieved. So I guess my question to everybody is, do you think that this will result, I mean, that's my opinion based on facts and based on studies and former employers in New York that are cutting down and getting rid of the minimum wage increased from, I think it was $5 an hour to $7.25, soon to be $10, and now they're trying to do the minimum wage plus tips. The end result is it doesn't work out like that. You don't get the minimum wage plus get all the tips. Danny Meyer did that at 11 Madison Park when he was still there, and his people left.
40%.
They left. And they had no problem. They're all making $80,000 to $120,000 a year. These people, these are not the people being negatively impacted. So do you think that this is a good thing for the employees of DC? Will they result in more jobs or less jobs? Will more people be employed or less people be employed? And who's going to go out of business? In New York, there are significant closings of restaurants. From tried and true Da Silvano's and famous restaurants went out of business. They just said it's not worth it any longer. We can't make ends meet. The net margin, profit margin in restaurants is really, really slow, really, really small. And so we just bought a restaurant here in the neighborhood, and we looked at Virginia and Maryland because it's much more advantageous. So how many people are going to open restaurants in D.C. when it's a lot easier to employ people in Maryland and Virginia? So will more people open restaurants or less people open restaurants here?
And to that point, I've never met you before. I want to know what restaurant you just bought. But like Duke's Grocery, which is in Ward 3 and it's also in Ward 2, like they flat out said, like they were looking their sites on other places. They are not gonna. They might have to close one down, and they're gonna like not look to invest. The bar owner that I work for, he's just flat out. He's gonna open in Virginia, and there's a huge hospitality community that on the backs of hospitality, our neighborhoods have been completely transformed. And you guys are part of that renaissance too, right here in Van Ness. You have a Fabio, restaurant across the street, and they are totally against this. I can tell you that. I've met 3 times with their staff on this issue. So,
I mean, Jose Andres is against it as well.
Jose Andres is supposedly
let's.
So, and then my last point is our chef would like us to do counter service because in the end it will keep us in business. We are 2 families trying to support ourselves off of this restaurant that we're going to open hopefully sooner rather than later, up the block. My
politics and press.
Between, Chevy Chase DC. Yeah. So, do we do counter service and just pay everybody the minimum wage, soon to be $15 an hour, or do we do, the flat hourly wage? In which case, our employees would make more money. So it's still on the table. Which do we do?
You said you looked at Maryland and Virginia and you picked DC. Why?
We moved to DC from New York, and I love DC. And we live in the neighborhood, and our kids go to school here, and I just want a neighborhood restaurant. And it will result in a lot less money for us as business owners, but we weren't doing it for the money. This is more about a lifestyle and having some place that we can go and be proud of and have our kids be proud of, and we plan on being a neighborhood restaurant. So,
welcome to Washington.
Thank you. We've been here for 3 years now, but we've
been
looking for a restaurant for 3 years.
I'm not normally wedded to protocol. My wife would have laughed that I did that too. I apologize, but thank you for sticking in there.
Sorry, apologies.
Manita?
Question and a comment. I have to preface that this is I have to preface that I'm speaking as a resident of the district and not a university representative right now. So I've actually been at another ANC meeting where I heard you speak, and there was a point of contention there, and I think one of the commissioners brought it up. When you say you represent all of these restaurant workers, if I want to, and you just mentioned one, but if I went across the street or to any of my neighborhood restaurants and I say, does this woman represent your voice? Are they going to tell me, yes, I've met with her, I know who she is, she's speaking for me? What am I going to hear?
Yeah, I mean, I can't be at every single restaurant. We have a website. People ask for materials. People ask us to come. I was just at a Dan bar on Capitol Hill today. They asked for a staff meeting. We're going to be at Esposito on Friday. I mean, so it's not like I'm going. One person can't go door to door and have everyone.
But when you
sign
say
on.
you've met with all these people,
but I have met. I have met with. There's over 250 restaurants on my owner operator list, and then.
When you meet with the restaurants, are you meeting with the employees and the owners at the same time, or are there separate meetings, employees only, managers, owners only?
It depends on how they want to do it. At Rose's, I met first with you, with Michael, and you remember, we talked about this first because we thought it was important for you to understand it, for us to talk, and then you put it out to your staff if they were interested in having someone from Save Our Tips come, and then I just met with the staff who were anything there. So it depends.
But did you also have people from the opposition come and speak as well?
So,
or not the opposition, but
I guess if you're asking how did we come to our decision, I'm very involved with my staff, and we sat down and I said, hey, there's an initiative ballot. Let's look at all the things. This is the things that people are saying for it. These are the things. How do you feel about it? Because there was no opposition when we talked about it. All we had was the ROC, and we had the ROC's website. And a lot of my employees are tenured restaurant workers, and they start hearing the things that the ROC is saying about restaurant workers and about restaurants, and they look at me and they say, we don't support this. We do not. They do not speak for us. This is not good for us. They do not represent us. And I said, all right, we've made our decision. And Aaron's in the same boat, is that we made ourselves a voice of our employees. And that's always, Rose has always been that way.
But to institutions that are arguably making more than someone working at an IHOP.
The 1 or 4. I don't understand the question. So, because my guys are top earners, are less valuable?
Oh, of course not.
Okay.
We were working with Kitty O'Shea's. They have 8 people on staff. It's just a small local bar right here. I mean, we're working with whoever wants to do it. We're not twisting anyone's arm. We're not a membership organization. We are a campaign that's working to educate both the public and the voters, and working to amplify the voices of the people who are most affected by this, which are the servers, the bartenders, and the owners.
And I was just reading a few articles about this, and the states that have implemented, they found that even though some of them may have gone up on prices, people are still tipping. People necessarily haven't lost jobs, and I mean, in DC, you see a restaurant open one day and it's closed the next. You see a bar open one day and it's closed the next. That's just the way the industry works.
We actually
so
have very low closures here.
I wouldn't say that, gloom and doom, all the restaurants are going to pack up and leave DC if
I didn't
this
say
happens.
that.
Well, you didn't, but it's kind of coming across that way for me, personally. So I'm going to sit down now.
Thank you, Juanita. Mr. Kennedy, do you have a couple questions?
I'm trying to think. You're saying that many of the folks who are working for these restaurants are already these, scared stiff. They might lose their jobs. summarizing what you're saying, is there any evidence that people are afraid to tell the owners that, let's say I received $5 in tips and I needed $10 to make a minimum wage? So do I tell the restaurant owner I made the $10 so I keep my job? Is that a problem?
So is there proof of that probably happening? I would say maybe look at turnover rates. I mean, that's the only thing that I can think of off the top of my head.
Is there, I'm just worried that, let's say I'm newly arrived from Syria, I can barely speak English, and I'm looking a little strange. But I'm looking for a restaurant, a very low-end restaurant, and I'm getting the restaurant wage right now. But I goes to get some tips. Is there pressure on me so I can keep my job to say I'm getting the regular minimum wage with the tips going on?
I don't know that it's like how do you call it, like looming pressure from like a manager. It's more like of I tolerate it so that maybe I can make money tomorrow, or I leave. And so that's very hard to track, right? Because that's like an internal thing that happens with each worker. And if you have to provide, even if it's just for yourself, that's a decision they have to make for yourself. I had a comment about some other things.
So it's just sort of this implicit power structure, it seems like. You just have to put words in your mouth.
So the thing I'm worried about is the pressure to not make the actual minimum wage for everybody else, which is what the restaurant owner doesn't pay me when I'm getting tips. And then why should I have a minimum wage? If I'm getting the minimum wage, isn't that fine? Getting the overall minimum wage, not just the restaurant.
I'm not sure that I understand the question.
I think, are you asking if there's exploitation that the server would underreport to get the credit, or are you saying that if they overreport? Oh, they're getting pressure on their boss to overreport in order for the boss to be compliant. I mean, that is extremely specific, and I don't know if that issue ever arises, because I've never seen anything like that. But at the same time, that employer, because they registered as a business that has tipped employees with DC, they still have to submit those reports to DC, DOES.
I get the question now. So yes, that does happen. They'll actually tip out a certain amount in cash and report more on paper. But obviously, that's breaking the law, right? But if the worker doesn't know that they can report this, they're not going to. They're just going to take, their $20 in cash and go. The other thing about the employer quarterly reporting, I believe I just read an article that Councilmember Silverman, requested a report on how that all is going, and she still hasn't gotten an answer. When we asked the Department of Employment Services how many claims they had found and settled, how many investigations they had, without cause, what do you call it? Not surprise investigations, but random investigations, the numbers were not good. It was below the 20. So, but again, because the onus is on the worker, right?
Yeah, so the article she's referring to, the non-compliance rate, there were 5 instances. That's what DOES reported, is that there were 5 instances of non-compliance in 2016.
Of the people that reported.
Everyone's required to report.
But it's not voluntary. The
it's not
payroll reports,
it's not voluntary. In order to do business in DC with tip workers, you have to submit those reports every quarter.
Are you guys talking the same thing now? No, I can't.
I don't think so, but
Yeah,
but,
yeah, we need
but
to.
it's late. Yeah.
This has been very helpful,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah.
Very simple to
And-
do. It's really, really helpful.
If I can just say one thing. I think-
Closing remarks from both of you at 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think in the consideration of whether you think this is good or bad, if at any point in time that you think this is going to cost someone that lives in DC or works in DC their job, I hope you take that gravely. And I hope you, if you want to invest into all of the other issues, please make sure that they're there. Because I've done a lot of diligence on this and I haven't been able to find it. They have been here since 2009. They have 500 members.
You've attended ROC meetings.
I've
and there were
attended
no
ROC
tip
meetings.
employees.
Her and I have sat across the table from one another on her May Day march, where they were going to march from their office at Florida Avenue to Meridian Hill Park. I was the only person there with one of my tipped employees. So please, please, please take much consideration on what you're hearing and the data that you're receiving, because it will cost DC residents their jobs. And I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you for your time tonight, too. Jessica, if you could.
Closing statement. I mean, it's not a really closing statement, but yes, we do find that when you increase labor standards, including wages, lower wage employment decreases, right? The other thing is, you asked a question about, did you present both sides to your workers? It's kind of interesting when you present to a tipped worker something called Save Our Tips, that they would be all about that, right? So I just have to say, where the owners clearly started this campaign. So if your owner is coming to you and saying, "I'll be part of this Save Our Tips campaign," you're probably going to believe them, right? I don't know that that's a really good closing statement, but that's all I got.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys. Rachel, did you get all the material you need from these folks? If anything? I don't know if you guys have anything electronic that you want to send to us.
I gave you that, and that's all
Great.
website.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for your time tonight. Good luck with your
Thank you
business.
very much. We really appreciate it.
What's that?
I said I think I'll see you next month.
Okay. That sounds good. So we have an added agenda item. Shirley, I think this might be yours, the L1, L2
Yep.
bus issue.
Okay, so this should be pretty quick. I'm sure members of the community have heard that WMATA is considering changes to the L1 and L2 bus lines. They're considering 3 different proposals, which would in varying degrees dramatically impact the availability of bus transport in our area. So on May 3rd, they publicized a survey which closed on the 11th, which was Friday. And of course, as I'm doing this, my screen is going blank. But at any rate, I would like to move the ANC 3F adopt a resolution urging.
I don't. Sorry. Anybody have a hard copy?
Rachel has a hard copy, but she's not there. At any rate, what we'd like to do is we'd like to urge WMATA to field the survey for an additional 3 weeks, because we're concerned that we didn't have enough time to publicize it. And we would like to invite them to attend our June 19th meeting to present on the rationale for the proposed changes as well as results of the survey. And we ask them to refrain from making any decisions about the L1 and L2 bus lines, which are really important to our community, without more thorough community engagement, including but not limited to that ANC meeting. So I think that captures the 3 points in our most important clause. And so I'll stop there, see if anyone has any questions.
Yep. Questions? I know this was circulated ahead of time, and some of the commissioners added stuff in, which I'm assuming that was incorporated in. Any questions from the commissioners? Questions from the audience, the throng out there?
Okay, in that case, I move that we adopt this resolution to WMATA.
I second
Did you have a question, sir?
I'm not familiar at all with those changes.
Okay.
Well, let's go ahead and we have the motion in front of us and the vote, I think, right?
Yeah.
So someone seconded your
Yes.
motion, and so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vote is 5-0. Sorry, David.
So Metro has proposed 3 possibilities for revising it. One is to altogether, and I don't have my notes in front of me, my computer died just in time, but one is to eliminate the L1 bus route altogether. Another is to reduce the frequency, I think, of L2 stops. So on certain days of the week, it would have longer periods between buses. And the last one would be actually consolidating bus stops. So I wouldn't quote me on that. It's on the WMATA website, and I'm happy to provide that information via email. But that's the thrust of the 3 options, and obviously, in varying degrees, they could have a huge impact since those are, main Connecticut Avenue lines that many of our residents use.
Thank you so much for getting that together so quickly. We are going to move on to, I believe, our April minutes.
So I move to have the March and April minutes approved as amended.
Second.
Those in favor? Aye. So the March and April minutes will be approved as amended. Moving on to the next other business. This might be you, Shirley, the other business, and I have the quarterly report, which I actually printed, the treasurer's report, which I had printed out, but this probably isn't going to help you.
Oh, no, yeah, this is...
It's microprint.
So that's not something we have to
So
approve.
I just wanted to provide the treasurer's report, and...
Right.
Is this the right... I wonder if... Okay, I might have to provide a double update next week. Okay, I didn't include the grants in the last one that day. Okay, so since our last reported expenditures, we have spent $3,009.01 and received $3.88 in interest. The expenditures include the grants that we approved last time, so I didn't report on them then, even though the checks were written last. Is $88,247, and that is well within our liquidity and extraordinary expense reserves that we have approved.
So, just out of curiosity, the sort of grants and potentially special projects that we might be looking at in the next couple months, where would I be looking at that?
So that would not come out. So what you have here, these are the budget amounts we voted on, but we have a much higher actual bank balance. So basically we voted to approve in advance expenditures up to $22,120.
Okay.
And anything outside of these items we have to vote on as individual things, which is why we would be voting on this outside of our grant.
And what's our, remind me what our liquidity balance is?
So it's $50,000 and for extraordinary expenses and $6,000 for liquidity.
Okay. Any other questions?
We receive annual allocations from the city, and the way we get them is we're required to file quarterly reports for accountability purposes that document all of our spending and expenditures. The city reviews that, and as each quarterly report is approved, they release a quarterly allotment, which for the last couple of years has been about $15,800 a year. So ANC 3F over the years didn't spend a lot of money, and so we ended up building up a pretty large reserve compared to most ANCs. We didn't have an employee for a long time. We do now. And so one of the ways we're spending that down is through grants to our community. Not all ANCs provide grants. It's not, and partly because the amounts are normally small.
So when you provide a grant to a grantee, is that duplicate funding? Is that city funding twice in case they get funding from another?
There are rules that govern what we're allowed, who we're allowed to give grants to. In particular, if they can get money to cover their expenses from the district, then we're not allowed to give them grants. This has to be outside of what they can get from the district.
And it's important also our annual allotment from the ANC's annual allotment from the city is set. It's based on your size of the ANC. It's a certain amount per member, and so every 7-member ANC in the city gets the same annual budget. The 9-member get a little more. The 2-member get a little less.
Do you have to have an approved budget?
We do. Yeah. At the beginning of every year, we approve a budget that is publicly available online.
But our allotment is not based on our budget. Our budget's based on our allotment from the city. That's what's fixed.
That's right. That's right. So we're in a somewhat unique position in being able to consider a large special project like this, and that's part of our initiative to put this money back into our community. Yeah, and that's what they were alluding to when there was some discussion about whether we would be funding the same project as the city, because we would be very careful not to do that.
Terrific. Is there any other? Thank you for your question. Any other business in the other business category?
No.
Any other items before we adjourn?
Are you making a motion to adjourn?
I'm making a big motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
5-0. Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Jessica.
Sorry, Shirley.